Hi, good. Okay, so we were like about to start with the new chapter, that is contribution of moral thinkers and philosophers today. Did you go through the material that was like shared with all of you, the notes, the bullet notes associated with thinkers and philosophers? And I had also requested all of you, with respect to reflecting upon the material that was like connected with the topic of thinkers and philosophers. Did you go through it when we are talking about it? I hope you went through it, right? So when we are like substantiating the given components pertaining to this area of like moral thinkers and philosophers, we need to reflect upon the given sub-segments related to what we are going to approach, what all we are going to study. So with respect to this, I have sorted out a lot of components for all of you, and we would be like reflecting upon it. So first and foremost, what I have done for all of you is like this part we had discussed. So starting with first and foremost Western philosophy. So in Western philosophy, dividing it into different eras. And when I'm talking about different eras, I imply to say talking about the segment of, we can say, philosophers and thinkers from ancient, medieval, modern, and contemporary, all those given possibilities related to it. After that, we would be reflecting upon ancient era thinkers, pre-Socratinian thinkers, who they are, and after that Socrates, and then Plato and Aristotle. And after that, we would be after substantiating the insights pertaining to the thinkers, these like ancient era thinkers, I would be today discussing with all of you certain segments. I've created some notes also for all of you to read as homework. So I would be discussing certain segments related to question and answers for Indian thinkers. As I told you, that Indian thinkers, rather than teaching them, because you will always like already be introduced to these thinkers via history. You will be introduced to Buddhism, Jainism, Mahatma Gandhi, Nehru. So like a few thinkers and philosophers, how to read them, how to get into. Please provide bullet notes of philosopher. Gaurav, it is already there. Ethics notes that was posted like a week and a half back. Just open that, get familiar with it. You will find it over there. The bullet points related to thinkers. It is given in that. It was a wholesome material pertaining to all the topics in a brief way. So just go through that. Yes, it is a 77-page notes in that only. Now, so in this Indian philosophers and thinkers that we would be taking up today, through question and answer, we'll get a brief overview how to deal with it. So we will be reflecting upon APJ Abdul Kalam sir. After Kalam sir, we will be reflecting upon Nehru's ideas when we are speaking of it. So we will be speaking of Tirukural also, Tiruvalluvar's work. So from there was a question: falsehood takes the place of truth when it results in unblemished common good. So what does it imply, and what we can reflect upon it from this given sub-segment. Again, Nehru's concept related to secularism, we will be reflecting upon that, though this is also there in your syllabus pertaining to, we can say, Indian society. So salient features of Indian society of secularism and communalism. You have it in polity as well. So like this is something pertaining to ethics. Further, when we are discussing about it, we will be discussing Nehru's idea on secularism. Then we will be reflecting upon nationalism and pluralism with reference to Tagore's idea of nationalism and how is it relevant today. So we will be reflecting upon that. And after that given possibility, we will be also reflecting upon this given component of Mahatma Gandhi's quotation. Okay, so I have no clue, Mithun, what technical issue you are asking. Okay, so when we are discussing about this segment, this is how we are going to discuss upon about the Indian philosophers and thinkers. All right, so this is something which we all are going to reflect upon as we are going to talk about Indian thinkers towards the second half. The first half we will be reflecting upon ancient philosophers and thinkers, which we are going to start now. So with respect to this given sub-segment, when we are talking about philosophy and when we are discussing about it, okay, so with respect to it, we all can start reflecting upon how Western philosophy unfolds itself. So with respect to it, as we like see how Western world is like reflecting upon the forms of philosophical inquiries, the first one, the ancient era, can be associated with the pre-Socratic philosophers. When we are discussing about that, so the pre-Socratic philosophers means before Socrates. Okay, so before Socrates, the philosophers who were there. So pre-Socratic philosophers. After that, we will also reflect upon Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle. Right? So this is going to be our nature of inquiry. This is virtue ethicists. Virtue ethicists. Okay. With respect to this medieval era, when we are speaking of it, in medieval era, which is between 5th to 16th century AD, so here we see there is fall of Roman Empire and rise of Christianity, right? You can zoom it. You can always zoom it, Vivek. It will be fine. So medieval era, the fall of Roman Empire and rise of Christianity. This is what unfolds before all of us. So in this, we can think of Saint Augustine. That's why Saint Augustine, like, with the insights, the philosophy is coming from Christianity. You can also think of Thomas Aquinas. And we can also connect it with Machiavelli, right? So from these perspectives, we will be reflecting upon these thinkers, right? Again, modern era, again, like, giving a brief overview about the thinkers, but there is no end to it. I'm just putting and like enlisting the important ones. Still, there is no end to it. Right. So modern era, these are some noted thinkers if we speak of it. And in contemporary times, you can think of again a lot of them. Carol Gilligan. You can think of John Rawls. This again is an endless list. Just trying to enlist few of them so that you are at least familiar with their names, a bit of their work. Because after all, this is not an optional paper. So there is a limitation to the number of thinkers who can be discussed, right? Like having a brief idea about Michel Foucault, Derrida, Chomsky, right? So you can again have a sizable list related to this as well, right? Yes, you can think of Lincoln, you can think of her aunt. So her aunt is also there. Like again, as I told you, there can be a lot of thinkers pertaining to the present times who can be incorporated. Like for example, you can say I've not written Voltaire, but it's not that Voltaire is not there when we speak of the modern era thinkers, right? So that's there. Karl Marx is not there, but it does not mean that Marx is not there. I've not written like Gandhi, but it's not that Gandhi is not there. AJ Ayer. Okay, so a lot of thinkers, just because they are not there, does not mean that they are not important. They are important, but how far to consolidate, how far to incorporate, that's the challenge, because this is not an optional paper and there is a limitation to this. Yes, you can think of Boas, and other than Frank Boas, you can think of he's also quoted like in the world of anthro and sociology as well, when you're talking about the issue of family. Anyway, Lenin, yes. Leo Tolstoy, yes. You can think of all these thinkers as well. But the question is that when nowadays examiner is asking the question, the examiner is saving you to reflect upon the theory of the thinkers limited to these prominent ones. And like other than these prominent ones, what UPSC is doing is it is picking the quotation of the other important thinkers who are not in this specific list, picking their concepts and just asking the concept, asking the philosophy per se. And the philosophy need not always be exclusive to that thinker. After explaining that thinker's perspective, after changing the para, you can draw multi-dimensional insights by deriving a, we can say, a logical corollary from different other, we can say, contributions of other thinkers as well. That can also be incorporated. Can we connect social thinkers? Yes, you can connect social thinkers always. So Max Weber, Weber spelling is incorrect. It is Weber, not double B. And yes, Weber has been asked in the past. That is in 14. So that's how you're supposed to reflect upon it. So when we are talking about the very possibility of ancient era philosophy, we can see ancient era Greece around 5th century BC. There used to exist city states like Athens, like Greece, like Sparta. Okay, so you see all that in India also. You can see, you can connect with the idea of Mahajanpadas. The Mahajanpadas, they were also city states like Magadha, Koshambi, right, Varanasi, Avantika, all that, right. So when we are speaking of this ancient era and the like possibility associated with the thinkers, we all can see that it initially started with a like a lot of trade and commerce. And when we speak of trade and commerce related to the city states, we can see that different thinkers came across, or they came in contact with different other cultures. And with this exposure to different cultures, they realized that there is diversity to the interpretation of what is the idea of truth. Okay, and when there is diversity to the insight or understanding of truth, we all can reflect upon the given dimension associated with how we can arrive at the real interpretation or the correct interpretation with so much of diversity that we are exposed to. So Europe, when we are speaking of it, it was undergoing tremendous transformation, and at the core was economy. The economics was determining the trade, the commercial revolution, the contact with other civilizations, and thus exposure to diverse cultures, like insights, perspectives that the world was experiencing. So when, like Greece, it starts with, we can say, different types of trade. When Greece starts with, like getting connected to different communities via, like we can say, ships, and like connecting with all these communities with respect to, we can say, in the 5th century BC, with respect to the kind of exposure pertaining to what like the different communities were like dealing with or indulging in. So we all can see that a lot of possibilities were associated with expansion of the horizon of the people. So people, they started like getting exposed to new customs, new traditions, questioning their own morality, how far they are correct. And if everyone is correct, then why the interpretations are different? Okay, so why there are different moral codes of conduct? And like what we are considering as our system to be correct, and other people's system is also correct. So is it leading to a relative comparison that who is better and who's not better when we are talking about this? So different types of thought processes, different types of insights is also something which we all can connect with. So when we are talking about the pre-Socratinian philosophers, we see that they're a byproduct of this inquiry, this change that was occurring in Europe, and this moral inquiry that what is the right way to think and observe the truth, and how to like arrive at a clearer explanation to what morality is all about. Okay, so in that we all can see that the pre-Socratinian philosophers, first and foremost, when we are talking about them, so we can say that there's Thales of Miletus. Before explaining him, just giving you an overview. So in pre-Socratinian philosophers, you can consider the sages of Greece. In sages of Greece, you will get Thales. You can get associated with other thinkers like Pythagoras, Heraclitus, Protagoras, and then comes Socrates, Plato, Aristotle. Okay, Thales is associated with the seven sages of Greece somewhere. Okay, so seven sages, who are the seven sages? That's also a matter of debate, that who qualifies under the category of seven sages. So there is this specific tile which was there in one of the Bibles, sorry, in one of the churches in Europe, and this style represented something like nine sages. So the popular term used as seven sages, and who qualifies under it, it's a matter of debate. As I have incorporated this also, Diogenes Laertius, a very popular philosopher, he also has pointed this out, that like among his sources, great disagreement has been there over which figures, who like as thinkers can be counted among the seven, who can be incorporated within the seven thinkers and philosophers when we are speaking of him. Okay, so we all can reflect upon this given possibility. First and foremost, Thales of Miletus, when we are talking about him, he is the first person, he is a philosopher, as you can see, mathematician, astronomer, and he advised know thyself. Now, there is also Pittacus of Mytilene, and he is trying to reduce the power of nobility, and maybe a student of political science may get introduced to a few of these thinkers. There's a fair possibility, but the concern is not political over here. The concern is discussing about what is the right thing to live and how. So the concern is more philosophical in nature, even if you are introduced to these thinkers in your optional subjects, that's there. And just stick to the contour, that's more than enough for you to respond to it when we are speaking of it. So seven sages are the Hinduism with names. Yes, even here we are discussing it with names, Prithviraj, right? With respect to Western philosophy. This concept we have in Indian mythology. So true, we do have a similar concept in Indian mythology, but it is mythology, the concept of Saptarshi. And the concept is mythology because proving the possibility of them by connecting them with astronomy and astrology becomes little tedious. Okay, so that's there. Ancient philosopher were associated with many disciplines. So very true, because you can understand that philosophy is the mother of all disciplines. In the previous session, I said that it is mother of all disciplines. So you can see philosophy is divided into natural science, and then you can connect it with mathematical precision, and you can connect it with social sciences. It can connect it with philosophy of society, so social philosophy, political philosophy, metaphysical philosophy, if you remember all that, right? Philosophy related to natural sciences, so natural philosophy. There are so many branches, and that's why you can associate the philosophers with a lot of disciplines simultaneously. So Pittacus of Mytilene, he suggested that power of the nobility, okay, should be reduced. It should be reduced, and people, demos means the common people, okay, common people. So the common people should be the ones who should govern. With their support, governance should take place. Again, we can see Bias of Preen. So Bias of Preen, he was a politician and a legislator, and he also existed in 6th century BC. Similarly, Solon of Athens, he was very famous legislator, reformer from Athens, and he was associated with creating laws and talking about or shaping the possibility of Athenian, we can consider democracy. Again, Cleobulus, when we are talking about him, so Cleobulus, also called the tyrant of Lindos, he is reported as grandfather or father-in-law of Thales, and Periander of Corinth, and then we have Chilon of Sparta, and he was a Spartan politician who discussed about militarization of the Spartan society. Okay, so these different thinkers contributed in their own way, amongst which Metellus of Thales. So he is quite important, and Miletus, when we are reflecting upon him, there is this basic information which I have just picked it up. So he is one of the seven sages in Greece, and many regard him as the first philosopher in the Greek tradition, father of Western philosophy. I though we call Socrates as the father of Western philosophy, okay, we need to understand that the very contribution of shaping philosophy goes to Thales. Okay, he is the man who's a mathematician, also associated with geometry, and tried to calculate the height of pyramids and the distance of ship from the shore. So, trying to bring in mathematical precision to our reality when we are speaking of it. Okay, sophists later. We'll talk about sophists. Okay, so when we are discussing about it, what is the use of seven stage? And can be a direct question. What is the use of seven stage? We are talking about sage, not stage, first and foremost. What is the use? Because they are pre-Socratic philosophers. So it's not that philosophy is emanating and emerging with Socrates. There were thinkers before him who are trying to shape in their own ideas the philosophy, the domain of philosophy, the discipline of philosophy regarding what is right, what is wrong, whether it was associated with political domain or mathematical domain or scientific domain or economic domain, whatever it was. That is what we need to understand. And you're not going to get a question on seven sages, Anjali. That's why I have just given a brief introduction. If you get a question that will be like evolution of Western philosophy, then in that case, you'll not get a question on seven sages, but I cannot skip it and straight away jump to Plato. That will not be fair. That's why just giving a brief overview of we can say Western philosophers and thinkers, and starting with the one to whom the contribution is given. And that will fix the basic fundamentals about how you are supposed to read or know about philosophers and thinkers. That's the purpose. All right. Now, so good evening, all the students who have joined in between and who have greeted, and greetings to all. Okay, so when we are talking about Miletus, he considered that everything is made of water, everything. And he considered that, when we are talking about it, he considered that also five elements of nature is involved in our formation. He was a physicist and a mathematician, as I have said. So his idea of five elements is quite similar to the Indian expression of Pancha Tattva. Okay, and we can consider that these pre-Socratic philosophers, they tried to explain what's happening in nature and how the five elements are supporting our existence rather than the idea of God. Okay, so the focus was not on theology or religion or the idea of God. It was more associated with trying to explain the existence of human beings via nature. Okay, so explaining insights associated with nature when we are talking about it. So why do all ancient philosophers and thinkers look alike? Well, because probably there was no picture to be taken. We didn't have cameras. So a tentative insight associated with the description that is given in the ancient texts must have encouraged them. And also the statues which are found must have encouraged them to have an idea that this is how probably they looked like. All right. Now, with respect to this, when we are talking about Thales of Miletus, he said that the body, in fact, I can quote him, the body is the house of God. Man, know thyself, and you would know the gods. Now, this idea that the body is the house of God, and if you know yourself, you know God. This idea is quite closer to what Vivekananda had said, Jiva is Shiva. Okay, so Jiva is Shiva, his idea, and service to mankind is service to God. That is something which we all can connect with the given possibility. What is thyself? Thyself means oneself. Know yourself. So that's the, we can say, Shakespearean English which is used. Thyself means knowing oneself. Okay, so please increase the font size. I cannot increase the font size. I mean, can you read this can you read this side statement underneath Thales of Miletus? If you can read underneath Thales of Miletus, many regard him as the first philosopher in Greek. I'll stick to that font size. All right. Okay. So, Madhava Seva is Manav Seva. Yes, you can connect with those ideas also, right? Again, thou, thy are favorite in Shakespeare plays. Okay. Thyself, I've already said. Know thyself means know yourself. Okay. I hope that serves the possibility. So, with respect to it, when we are further moving ahead, we can, like in India also, when we speak of the Saptarshis, the seven sages, so there is Gautama and Agastya and Bharadwaj and there's Artri and Jamdagni, and there is Vashishta and Vishwamitra, right? All these people, seven children of Brahma, as it is given. And all these were saved from the great deluge by, we can consider the avatar of Vishnu, all that stuff that is there. Anyway, so when we are talking about Thales, Thales is talking about the possibility of how we are somewhere connected with God via this body. So most important philosophy, he said, is know your own nature, your own chemistry, your own existence, and you are able to understand the manifestation of God. Vivekananda said Jiva is Shiva. Jiva is Shiva. Jeev hi Shiv hai. This is Vivekananda. That's how you draw comparatives. All right. So, yes, knowing oneself is the beginning of all wisdom when we speak of it. So, then we can see Pythagoras. Pythagoras theorem you must have studied in mathematics, right? So, again, a brief overview to who Pythagoras is. So, he tried to explain the world through mathematical formulae. Okay, explained the world via mathematical formulae. Formulae, or we can also say terms and terminologies. Okay, so he tried to explain that how the world is associated with what we all are experiencing, why these thinkers are before Socrates. I mean, Meshach, before your birth, like all the siblings you will have, they will be pre-Meshach, family members of Meshach. So pre-Meshach means before the birth of Meshach. I hope you understand that, right? So when we are speaking of this, because when someone is very important, okay, so pre-Akbar period, pre-Ashokan period, that's how you give importance to the individual, by considering the era to start with the person. So pre that person means before that person was born or existing, right? That's what it implies. Now, so with respect to this, when we are discussing about the thinkers, and with respect to Pythagoras, when I'm just exposing you to the idea of who he is and what he is contributing, so you'll see that he is seeing everything in terms of numbers, everything. Like he is seeing the human beings as unique formulas. Okay, humans are like unique formulas. That's what he considered. And he said our unique formula is something which is determining what we would live, what we would experience. Remember that movie of Matrix? Everything is getting constructed with internet coding and 0 and 1. So in the similar manner, he considered that there is a unique equation to every human being. Every human being is a set of equation, a set of formula. And when we are applying the, like we can say, correct formula, we would be leading a human life. If we go unethical, our unethical conduct will lead to wrong formula. Due to wrong formula, our equation will change, and in the next birth we will be born as a animal rather than as a human being. So that's what you will find it, this his theory connected to the theory of reincarnation, which is quite popular in the Indian subcontinent, right? So he gave this theory of reincarnation, that if you are unethical, your formula changes, your equation changes, and you are reincarnated as an animal. You are not reincarnated as a, we can consider as a human being. Yes, yes, like post Gupta, like post Maurya. Very good, Labdhi, you can connect with that. So that's what we can speak of it. So he started connecting human beings with, the mathematical formula. You go unethical, your formula gets disturbed, you are reincarnated as a different animal. So that's something which you can consider the importance of numbers even in other religion. Like Christianity discusses 666 as a ominous number. We can say 777 is considered as God's number. Okay, and it is considered lucky in Christianity. Similarly, in Islam, you can see 786. 786 is nothing but we can say an abbreviation of Bismillahir Rahmanur Rahim. Okay, so that is a representation of this specific expression in 786. Okay, when you're starting everything in the name of God. So different religion tend to endorse different numbers. In astrology and numerology also, you'll find there is a relevance attached to numbers, like 4 given to Rahu, and that's why people said 2020 was a disastrous year for the world, and again 2024 is coming, so it is another number for Rahu. So again the world can undergo certain dilemmas, and we can say intellectual deluge and confusion when we speak of it. So with respect to these given possibilities, when we speak of, like, let's say, the component of what we are experiencing around us, okay, we all can reflect upon the numbers. So numbers, we can see, we connect like 1 with sun, we can connect 2 with moon. This is how you'll see that in astrology these possibilities are connected, and that is something which even numerologists also use, and they also tend to predict with respect to these given possibilities. So can we say that these thinkers established the foundation of European civilization? Yeah, they were laying down the foundations of moral inquiry, mathematical inquiry. What is the moral way to live? What is the ideal way to exist? That ways we can definitely talk about this given possibility. So, past half an hour, I'm connecting to the mentor. So, download ERM, just clicked lecture 11. Uh, no idea, Anjali. There are 2 Anjalis. Please, SME, respond to Anjali. You need to just help her out, whatever is her concern. Okay. So you all can understand Pythagoras, the man behind the mathematics, not connecting mathematics only with objects and things, but also connecting it with human beings. Okay. Do we have a separate ethics exam in mains? SME, please support Pooja. She needs immediate help. Okay. So just help her out with this question, which is quite an important question, I think, which needs to be addressed immediately. Okay. So with respect to this given possibility, yes, even without scientific technology, or without any, we can say, instrument of being open to the world of learning, they could arrive at such knowledge and wisdom. If you're really curious, Anjali, or any student like Anjali is associated with the dashboard is showing that my study plan is completed. No, Dhananjay, there are 5 more days to go. SME, please escalate this issue, what Dhananjay is pointing out, or Anjali is pointing out, that why this is there in the study plan. This is something which is problematic. Maybe I can just share it in the break to Amarjeet. Just a second. So, okay, fine, wait. So, right now everyone has joined the session. So how about our capability to understand the concept? That will be great. No, there must be some technical glitch that can be rectified tomorrow. Let us focus on, already you people have joined the session, so how about not learning the content and focusing more on what was reflected on the dashboard, right? The bullet notes, Gaurav, has been already provided like 2 weeks back, last to last Friday. Go to the ARM section, you'll find there, download it. It is a 77-page ethics notes. In that, you will find the subcomponent of philosophers and thinkers given in bullet points. You are supposed to read it on Saturday and Sunday. No worries, start reading it now. All right. So, with respect to this given dimension, we all can see this given possibility. As you are curious about it, Anjali, and other, like, segments associated with this given possibility of, like, how such thinkers in ancient times are arriving at the world of wisdom, to which I can probably give you an idea. Okay. And the idea is this, that these thinkers and philosophers, they made specific inquiries as what is correct and how we can consider that that is the best thing, or that is the correct thing to do or live. There's a very interesting novel. Anyone who's into bedtime reading rather than surfing internet, for those students, it will be a very good book. Sophie's World. So Sophie's World, it's a very, not even a very expensive book. On Amazon you can find it. So you can gift it to yourself as your own birthday gift, and you'll understand why I said a birthday gift. So if you read that book, Sophie's World, you will get exposed to the evolution of Western philosophy. how Western philosophers and thinkers came into existence, how step by step they made some basic inquiries: what is existing, why is it existing, and how it came into existence, and how step by step they tried to find answers to those basic inquiries, which led to the establishment of this discipline called philosophy. Okay, so that's something which you can reflect upon. All right. So, when we are discussing about it, anyone of you who is interested to know about philosophy, Western philosophy, and how it emerged, and how in different phases different questions came into existence, and how human mind tried to reason out those like immensely intelligent questions, first arriving at the questions, then trying to find the probable answers. That's amazing. That's an amazing level of wisdom, and how human beings evolved, and how we have inherited so much of wisdom. So you will be reading that book and you'll really enjoy it. Read it like a bedtime book, not like an academic book, hardcore bedtime book. Because there's a kid who's a teenager and who gets introduced to the world of philosophy from her birthday. That's why I said take it as a birthday book for all of you. Okay, now when we are speaking of this, so Pythagoras, he described the world from mathematical terms, giving calculations to our existence and saying that all our relationships and existence can be calculated as a mathematical formulae. And he also spoke of transmigration of soul on the basis of our karma, on the basis of our ethics, which disturbs our formulae or which continues with our formulae and makes us like a better version of it. Sophie's World. Anurag, I repeat the name of the book, that is Sophie's World. Okay. Systematically, we have inherited so much of wisdom. So, how awesome it would be to like learn all that wisdom in one go just by reading a book, right? Can we consider philosophy as a big ocean? Yes, it is. And the different disciplines are like boats, not fish, boats. You can consider as boats, trying to have their own identity and putting in articles or something like that. So much of wisdom, and now we have flat earth believers. Okay, fine. Now with respect to this, when we are further substantiating, we can also connect the idea pertaining to Heraclitus. So when we are speaking of Heraclitus of Ephesus, so you can see there is a very interesting quotation which is given: everything flows, nothing stands still. Heraclitus is like this statement of Heraclitus was quoted by Plato in Cratylus. And when we speak of Heraclitus, who is he and what is the interesting thought process that he possesses that is important for all of us right now? So, with respect to this, when we are talking about it, so yes, everything is not permanent. So, very true. Pantathir, I don't understand what you have written, Sai. Dinesh, okay. So Heraclitus, he is saying that everything in the world is made of two opposing elements, constantly two opposing elements, two warring forces, okay, two conflicting or warring forces. And that is something which leads to the maintenance of integrity in our existence. Like, for example, even our body is made of two opposing elements. That's what Heraclitus says. So he is saying that our body is made of water and fire. Fire is the pure version of our existence. It's purity of soul. So when a child is born, the child is more in the fire state. And as we become morally corrupt, as we accept more and more immorality, water starts entering our soul. Our soul starts becoming moist. And that's how it becomes heavy and it gets corrupted. So when we are born, it is like, fire. But as we get into materialism, hedonism, carnal pleasures, material pleasures, sensory pleasures, it is that our soul, it becomes wet. The idea of good and bad, when that is compromised with, because both is there in a human being, it is then that we all can see that with that corruption, the possibility gets affected. Now this idea of good and bad is also associated with Indian philosophy. That's why I'm giving you comparative insights of Indian philosophy. So in Indian philosophy, you can see the idea of good and bad, like we have Satyug and Kali Yuga and Dwapar Yuga and Treta Yuga. So if I talk about Satyug, in Satyug, there were different, the idea of good and bad was associated with domains. zones or areas. Like there was, when we are talking about it, Asur Loka, and there was Dev Loka, and there was this Loka of Manav, so Manav Loka. So there were different lokas, there were zones that were distributed. And then after that, we see after Satyug, there comes the, like, Treta Yuga. In Treta Yuga, it started getting divided into kingdoms. So kingdoms whereby one king is fighting with the other king. So it was more associated. The idea of good and bad was divided into kingdoms. Okay. In Dwapar Yuga, the idea of good and bad, it shrunk. The conflict of good and bad, it shrunk into a family, like the Pandavas and the Kauravas. Okay. So the idea of good and bad, like having a friction, having a possibility of, we can say, friction pertaining to what context we belong to. And then comes the idea of Kali Yuga. In terms of Kali Yuga, we can see the idea of right and wrong. Okay, good and bad is something within a human being. So what we can see that, like, Heraclitus is saying, that is something which is also associated with the Indian philosophy when we are talking about the idea of Kali Yuga, whereby rather than in zones or kingdoms or family, the idea of good and bad will be within an individual, and a human being will be fighting over what's right and what is wrong. Okay, so if I sum up Heraclitus's philosophy, he considers that every object is like a living entity comprising of two opposing warring forces, two opposing combinations. Okay, and the good and bad exists in every aspect of existence or life. He considered that our soul is a mixture of fire and water. Fire is the pure existence, like water is the, we can say, the ignoble part. Ignoble means which is something not, that is not noble, something which can corrupt. Okay, and worldly pleasures are like making the soul moist. Okay, worldly pleasures are like, leading to the possibility of like an individual exercising his or her own reason, and that is how the soul, we can see, it becomes pure fire when we speak of it. And a great individual is the person who is able to save himself or herself from carnal pleasures, material pleasures and desires, and the person is able to overcome passions and cultivate inner peace and cultivate inner harmony, right? Again, we can further see that there is a very famous quotation of Heraclitus. He says, there is nothing permanent but change. Okay, probably I can just write that quotation also. There is nothing permanent. See, such thought-provoking statements. So nothing permanent but change. There is also one more statement that was asked in 2022 essay. Okay, that was a quotation from Heraclitus. It was like, into the same river, because they did not write in English, mind it. So translations can vary, but the essence remains the same. So into the same river, it is not possible to step twice. It is not possible to step twice. It is not possible to step twice. So this implies that yes, no man ever steps in the same river. So what it implies by saying this given statement is that when you are stepping into a river, stepping out of it, the river has already flown. New form of water is coming from the top. So the water is different. That's why the river is not the same. Now coming to you, every moment it is considered we are changing, not only at cellular level, but also at the level of thought, expression, belief, the way we process life and its possibilities. So that's what. So into the same river, it is not possible to step twice when we are talking about this given possibility. Okay, so that is something which we all can reflect upon when we are discussing about this given subsegment. All right. So into the same river, it is not possible to step twice. All right. This is what we can connect with. Fine. I hope all of you are able to deal with it and able to understand that why the individual is also not the same, the river is also not the same. Okay. So that's how we can understand Heraclitus. So making the mistake twice should not be done. That's also a way you can connect. Cannot commit the same mistake twice. All right. Change is the only constant. Yes, yes, yes. Very good. All of you are now bit by bit joining the dots. Now comes Protagoras. He is the first sophist. So one of you had asked, ma'am, a sophist. Can we consider all the pre-Socratinian philosophers as sophists? No. Okay. So he's the first sophist, that is Protagoras. So you can see Protagoras, the quotation like related to him is, let us hold our discussion together, our own persons, making trial of truth and of ourselves. Okay. So let us hold our discussions together, our own persons, making trial of the truth and of ourselves, right? So with respect to this, can you please repeat the same river quote? It's written, Sachin, you can revisit it later. All right. Now, so, when we are speaking of this given dimension of Protagoras, who is he first and foremost? What is his opinion? And later, like, who are sophists and how sophists are not so connected with Socrates? We'll move to that explanation and dimension. So, first and foremost, reflecting upon Protagoras. What is mean water is at rest? What is at rest? Well, Narendra, this statement can be used for, like, let us say a stream, sorry, I'm saying a lake. Okay, so when water is still, it is not moving, so it is still. And another thing is associated with a non-turbulent river, but it does not mean that turbulence is not there, that means flow is not there. It's just that it's non-turbulent. It is an expression in literature. Okay, now coming up with sophists first. Who are sophists? So in ancient Greece, you will find that these were the kind of teachers. More like in India, we had Brahmins. In the similar manner, in Greece, we had sophists. So these individuals, they specialized in rhetorics. Rhetorics means art of speech, art of speaking. Okay, they had the expertise on language, rhetorics, and philosophy, and they trained the students. Who were the students? So they were young statesmen, young boys of nobility. So they trained them with the skills of philosophy and rhetorics to these young boys belonging to the noblemen or the statesmen, so that they become competent to fight for elections, become a part of the we can say Athenian democracy. And that's why I said that sophists played a similar role to that of Brahmins in India, because they were taking money in exchange, they were taking monetary we can say favors in exchange, and in turn they were training the young boys of Athens. Okay, and that to the, we can say, the rich, or the, we can consider the well-off boys belonging to well-off backgrounds. Okay, so when we are talking about rhetorics, rhetorics is persuasive speaking. जब आप लच्छेदार भाषा में घोल गोल बोल सकते हैं ना, that is what is called rhetorics. When you can indulge in, we can consider persuasive speaking. So that is art of communication, and leaders need to have that. And that's how you can connect with Sushma Swaraj. She was a very fierce speaker. Atal Bihari Vajpayee was a very popular leader because of his speeches, very popular sensitive speeches. Even George Fernandez's speeches in 1970s as a trade union leader was quite popular in those times. So there have been quite prominent leaders on the basis of their speech, the sensationalism, and the kind of connect they can create with the people. Now, if you think of Manmohan Singh ji, so Dr. Manmohan Singh, he was always elected by Rajya Sabha, not by Lok Sabha, because this power of rhetorics was not there with him. He was a wise man who was always very reticent, not into too much of like garbage speaking, or even gift of gab, like whereby he can articulate his words in fancy ways and make it sensational. That was not him. He used to speak to the point, like in a rational, pragmatic manner. And because that rhetoricism was not there, that's why probably he was always elected from Rajya Sabha. Anyway, so you understand what is rhetorics, you are understanding what is philosophy. So rhetorics and philosophy is something which sophists were teaching in Athens, Greece, to young nobility and statesmen, and they were charging for it. And as democracy was introduced for the first time, so you needed to be a very good speaker, a powerful orator, and capable of understanding the basic skills, intellectual skills and philosophies, so that people are appeased by you and they vote for you, they choose you. So being eloquent was increasing your chances to be elected to power, right? So sophists, they were preparing the leaders, the young people from nobility and statesmen, to be a part of democracy, to get elected, like we can say, in democracy. Now, in this given situation, you will see that the sophists were the one who were opposed by Socrates. Socrates did not like sophists. He believed that knowledge should never be monetized, knowledge should never be monopolized, knowledge should never be only accessible to the rich. Knowledge should be free for all. Knowledge should be accessible to all. Qualitative knowledge should be a part of the thought process of all human beings. It should not be only with those people who are associated with, we can consider, only associated with the power of, we can say, money, as well as the power of articulation. So that's why we all can consider that, like, Socrates did not appreciate the sophists, and he was highly against them. Anyway, I'll get back to Socrates and the sophist debate little later. First, let us understand who Protagoras is. So, as we are discussing about Protagoras, we can understand he gave the concept of homo mensura. Homo mensura. As the term, you can see homo mensura, it literally means that man is the measure of all things. Homo is man, is the measure of all things, of all things. So he suggested that human beings evaluate things as per their interest and convenience. I can probably substantiate so that no one forgets it. So human beings evaluate things as per their own interest, as per their own interest or emotions and reasons. Right. Hence, there is nothing permanent. Hence, there is nothing permanent and common to all human beings. To all human beings. And whatever anyone, like, thinks as per the diversity, it's fine. According to them, there is no ultimate truth, there are only arguments, and with power of rhetorics you can always win the argument, or you can provide better logic to another person's logic. So it's like more like shastrarth happening in India, or the debate and dissent and the happening in ancient India, right, amongst philosophers and thinkers. So there is no truth, there is no truth, but only arguments, but only arguments. Who advocated against monetizing education? Socrates. Socrates advocated against monetizing education, and he was against the sophists. He was against sophists. Sophists, who were sophists? Sophists were the one who were monetizing education. One of the sophists, or the first sophist, is Protagoras. So it's not Protagoras like against monetizing education. All right. What does the quote in the picture of Protagoras mean? He says, let us hold our discussion together, our own persons. So let us hold our discussions together means there can be different opinions. So let us bring all our opinions together. Our own persons means let us bring all our personalities, thought processes, insights together, making trial of the truth. What is trial of the truth? So trial of the truth is focus on reason it out. Okay, so reasoning it out, you can see that. So reason it out, what is correct and what is incorrect. Okay, and of ourselves, and try to understand who we are and what ought to be followed by us. That's the idea that he gave when we are speaking of it. Okay, so can we consider Protagoras as father of debate in Greek tradition? Even before him, there were a lot of, we can say, philosophers who gave us the insight to dissenting opinions. Okay, so that's there. So you said that statesmen and noblemen, boys, yeah, because around the world we see that that is how Vanshika history has like unfolded itself. History is all about his story, okay, not her story. So that's what it is all about. So how can I put in the female perspective? Women were not even allowed to vote in ancient Greek civilization or Athens, despite democracy being there. Who was refrained from voting? So it was the poor, it was the women, if you actually look into it. So how can I incorporate the gender realm pertaining to noble men, making it noble women, or statesmen making it stateswomen? I cannot do that, because we are not talking about present and futuristic possibilities where gender diversity and equality needs to be respected in our speech. It is something which comes in our thought process, like the way it has been experienced so far, and that's what we are discussing: history and philosophy, right? So even now, morality police is there in Iran, in different parts of the world. Even in India, we can see there are so many people discussing how women ought to behave, or look like, or talk, or participate. Right? Aristotle considered old women and children are not citizen. Yes, that's the reason, because Aristotle, and for that matter Plato, and for that matter Socrates, they considered women are emotional beings. So when they are emotional beings, their decisions may lack rationality. That was the reason. It was later that you can see that Plato's opinion or Aristotle and Socrates' opinion gets contested when you say that because a person is enrolled into a specific social environment, brought up in a specific manner, it is that influences the, we can say, inner chemistry and the decision making capability. When we say women are very emotional, yes, they are emotional when they are tied to the walls of domesticity. Like if a mother is never stepping out, she is all the time surrounded for the concern of her husband, her relatives, her, we can say, children, and all the time thinking about them, cooking, managing their things, cleaning their things, arranging their things, and her entire world is associated with them 24/7. Only on occasions of festivity is that she is interacting with outsiders. So such a woman will be highly emotional because she is nurturing the beings. So anything happening to her husband or her children or her family members, she'll get super triggered. Her capability to maintain her emotional balance will get affected. She will howl, she will cry, she will overreact. That will be there because that's her nurtured reality. You think of women who have been exposed to the larger world, exposed to the larger possibilities, and see how their thought process evolves. And you'll see that, like, women like Indira Gandhi can also be there. Women like Razia Sultan can also be there. Women can also be effective decision makers, and if needed they can also be powerful, shrewd, like states persons, and they can also be into the game of politics, sometimes ruthless and sometimes even cruel if need be. So we cannot engender who is good at politics or who is good at statesmanship. It is more associated with the caliber of an individual, irrespective of gender, and how the person has been raised. If a person has been raised in a criminal environment, irrespective of a man or a woman, the tendency to develop acceptance towards crime will be higher. Similarly, if a woman or if any person is raised in a very protected environment in the four walls of the house, that is going to impact the patterns of thought and socialization, right? Okay, so I've spoken a lot. A lot of you are coming up with a lot of examples also of women who are exposed, trained, and they contributed massively. Yes, Plato has discussed it in Republic, but Plato gives equal opportunity to women to become philosophers. Yes, philosophers, because a woman can think sensitively and arrive at logic. She can contribute in her own way regarding what ought to be done, what ought to be understood. She can become a like queen. Okay, so she can become a queen, because she can have that access to power via king, and but she's not the only sole ruler of the throne, mind it. When it comes to political decision making, they consider that the political objectivity may be not there in women. That was the logic he had given. Children are young, old people, they lose their rationality after a certain age. That's why they are not given that power. That was the reason. I hope you are getting an idea. So it was a peripheral feminist or accidental feminist. No, Sanya, we can't say that, because probably many people will consider against the idea of he being a feminist. Just the opposite is what many people would consider. Plato doesn't think of gender equality. Yes, I mean, the thing is, why are we fighting or even reflecting upon gender equality? Can we not accept that people are a byproduct of their times, and as per the suitability of their times, they develop a sense of rationality, right and wrong? Like today, we are handling tablets and phones to our children, right? Very casually, 2 year, 3 year, 4 year old children are holding phones. We are keeping phones around our heads and sleeping, and very casually and very regularly all of us have a tendency to do that, right? And maybe after 50 years, if like human civilization comes across multiple case studies proving that how different diseases are happening because of having the mobile phone very close to us, and in earlier times, if they reflect 50 years later or 70 years later, our forefathers who invented the mobile phone, it made such terrible radiation and they kept it in their pocket close to heart. They gave it to the children to play for hours, and then there is a possibility they will look down upon us. They will criticize us. Oh my god, what kind of ethos! They did not even have this basic sensibility when they were aware that so much of radiation is taking place, and there was no radiation blocker also technology in their phone. All that, if spoken 100 years later, will not be correct, because today the level of awareness, exposure, accessibility, parental training, and massive, we can say, technological understanding and exposure is not there, right? So evaluating from the technology of 100 years later and the ethos and values of 100 years later, evaluating with those values and technological exposure, a man who was 100 years earlier, that is today, will not be fair. Okay, so उसको काल दोष माना जाता है. It is considered a mistake that you commit by not reflecting upon the relativity of time in determining ethics. Okay, so that's why you are supposed to be careful when you are incorporating the insights. Okay, I hope all of you are understanding this bit. Yeah, all of you. Yeah. So, well, as we are, yes, yes, like innovation of plastic and all of it. Later, we might have a differential opinion. In the similar manner, let's not reflect upon gender from today's value systems, the idea of slavery from today's value systems. Let's be open that with differing times, people arrive at different, we can say, opinions, insights, values, which shapes our possibility accordingly, right? Okay, further, when we are moving ahead, we can think of Protagoras, what he says. So he says there are no truth but only arguments, as I quoted him. Okay, so what is he suggesting? He is suggesting that there is nothing like final truth. What we all can see is happening around us is associated with the relativism. So we can see that rather than ethical universalism, sophists, ayo, sophists in general case, and he believed in moral relativism. Moral relativism. And when we say moral relativism, what does it imply? It implies that ethics change. Ethics change with the possibility of, we can say, time, place, and person. So this is the idea that they endorsed. Okay, that everything should be connected with the diversity of background that human beings are associated with, and how the dynamism of human beings diverse background is determining the idea of right and wrong. And that's why, rather than having an absolute understanding of what is right and wrong, let us be open to just arguments, and on the basis of arguments, let us determine what is correct and suitable as per the individual and his or her situation. Okay, so that's why we see that they talked about the importance of mind. Okay, discussed the importance of mind, importance of mind over body. So they considered that rather than body, what is really important is mind. And it is the mind which is creating a lot of possibilities for us. And that is also something which you will see Socrates continues with. Not just we can consider that considering that body is important, Socrates also speaks of the similar thing. Socrates says that mind is relatively more important than the human body. First comes the world of ideas via brain, then comes the world of senses, that is body. So there are two worlds which are governing us, the world of senses and the world of ideas. And above, like world of senses, it is world of ideas that is constantly governing us or shaping us. All right, so I hope all of you are able to understand who the sophists are and what this first sophist Protagoras is introducing with respect to the ideas. Shankaracharya, who said Jagat Mithya, Brahma Satyam, he was also talking about, giving importance to the mind, that the world is a negation. What actually is truth is what we can understand from our mind, what can be interpreted or arrived at via mind, right? So we see that Socrates, the next thinker, as we are talking about him, he is introducing us to the idea of mind. Okay, so Socrates, very briefly if I speak of it, so he discussed that first is the world of ideas. World of ideas. And what is world of ideas? It is associated with our brain. And then he discusses, then comes the second. What is second? It is the world of senses. World of senses. And this is associated with body. So even Socrates gave importance to mind. Okay, importance to mind. And Socrates also glorified the idea associated with mind, that what is important and how it ought to be connected with our idea of being rational, capable to live, associated with our, we can say, the world of philosophy and achieving certain practical results, right? And the wholesome well-being of our existence. And we can see that how it is connected to our ethical system based on human reason, and rather than any specific form of religious doctrine. So human reason is what he is prioritizing, right, rather than any religious doctrine. Anyway, when I'm starting with Socrates, first and foremost I'll give you an overview regarding what Socrates said. Who is Socrates in the picture? The man who's about to hold the the pot of poison. So let me explain this image, what this image is all about. Okay, and then you all shall get an idea associated with him. So first and foremost, giving a brief overview about Socrates. So he's one of the greatest philosophers in the world. He is considered as father of Western philosophy. He is considered the first systematic moral thinker of Western tradition, born around 467 BC. He also served in army and known for his courage. Okay, he practiced what he preached. He never wrote a book. Who actually articulated his ideas? Plato. So it is Plato who articulated his ideas. And this is something which I have substantiated in the next point. That is, we know Socrates through the writings of Plato in dialogues, where the main character's name, the protagonist's name, is Socrates. And via Socrates, whatever the character Socrates speaks, we consider that that's what probably Socrates would have spoken. Okay, this Socrates would have spoken. Okay, so Socratinian method, before I explain what was the Socrates method, a brief overview regarding who Socrates was, because here we are starting with a very important thinker. So a brief overview is necessary for all of us to understand who is he and what he has created. Or Platonic is Socrates. 6 point. What is it? 6 point. We'll get to read what is there in the PPT. Maybe first I should show you the image only. So that's when we can go ahead with the explanation. So Socrates, as I said, that he was from Athens, Greece, and in the second half of 5th century, we see his impact unfolding. So we see that he gave he had profound influence with respect to the tradition of modern philosophy. And even today, from ancient to modern times, we recall Socrates for his profound contributions, right? So he is the man who like disrupted the status quoist attitude, means accepting things on the face value and not questioning it. He is the man who started encouraging us to question things and not accept it just because someone is saying it to us. We should always always question the possibilities and then arrive at the truth. So that's what we can see with respect to Socrates when we are talking about this given segment. And he is the person who did not write anything. He was into generally empowering the youth with his teachings, primarily through, we can see, question answer method. Okay. So we all can see that Socrates, he is when we are talking about him, he is admired by Plato, he is admired by Xenophon, like some important philosophers, if I speak of ancient time period. So he is the person who got into the preaching of ideas associated with self mastery, how we should have complete control over ourself. When we control our rationale, how we can control our pleasures, desires, how we need to at all times exercise integrity. It is important for us to be person of integrity. Again, we can consider that he is the man who is he became quite controversial a figure in Athens, in native Athens, because he started mocking the sophists. Here comes the problem. So when he starts mocking the sophists by, like, let's say a sophist is teaching some rich noble guy or a statesman. So like, let's say a commoner is coming with a question, or a noble guy is coming with a question before Socrates. So Socrates would not respond to the answer. He will ask a question to the question. So when the guy, the noble guy or the commoner, responds to the question as an answer, then he further raises another question, then another question, then another question. So slowly and steadily guiding the person to the logic. Like, let's say a person is asking that, sir, what is a secular state? I'm just giving an example. This is not the question that was raised before him. Suppose you ask me, ma'am, what is a secular state? I was like, is India a diverse country? You're like surprised, eh? So how are the two questions connected? So you're like, yes, ma'am, it is a diverse country. I was like, why is it diverse? So you're like, ma'am, it is diverse because there are different religions, language, religion, race. I'm like, okay. So if it is such a diverse country, at all times people might not be respecting diversity, accepting diversity. You're like, yes, ma'am, there are a lot of frictions. Once in a while, people are ready to beat each other to assert that their religion or their race or their ideas are better than that of others. I was like, so do we need solutions to this problem in a formal way? You're like, yes, ma'am, there should be a formal way to solve it, maybe through law, through rules, through regulations. I was like, but I really wonder what can solve this problem. Like, what can the state come up with a solution so that diversity is respected? So, like, ma'am, diversity can be respected if all religion are treated equally. And it is made mandated by the state that all religion are equal. So none of them should be treated unequally or superior to the other. I'm like, okay, wow. And something else, like maybe state should not have its own religion, so that we do not determine that this is the religion which the state is endorsing or is considered indirectly more important. I'm like, okay. And something more, it's like the state should propagate harmony, like liberty, equality, fraternity. When people are living peacefully under the rules, regulations, state not having its religion, all religion are respected equally, maybe then harmony can be there. I was like, so that's what secularism is all about, the principle or the essence of secularism. Got it? This is Socratinian method. You ask a question, I do not give an answer directly. I guide you to the answer. I guide you to the answer via question answer, question answer, question answer. So, what is happening? You are arriving at the answer yourself through this Socratinian method that I shared with you. And when you arrive at the answer yourself, the idea of dawning of the wisdom upon you will be tremendous. It will be greater. Because logically, step by step, you yourself were guiding yourself to the answer. Like the teacher or Socrates or I, just giving you a little push to move in that direction and think in that direction. When that happens, it is something that dawns upon you which is more profound. It stays more profoundly with you. And that is one of the reasons how you can understand that Socrates had a profound impact on the youth of Athens. That is why, whether the youth was like belonging to nobility, or we can consider were statesmen, young statesmen, or they were common boys, everyone was highly inspired by Socrates and was following him thoroughly. Okay. And his popularity used to stink. It used to like be a negative impact being created on the sophists used to feel it as a direct challenge, because he's neither charging and also mocking the sophists by calling their method of dictation is more like feeding the child. So Socrates is guiding you to the answers which you can arrive through your own logic. Okay, so the impact was more tremendous, more number of followers. So and this kind of, we can say, intellectual friction going between the sophists and like Socrates when we speak of it. So this is what we all can understand. So many people in Athens admired Socrates for his ability and for his capability to empower people with wisdom, the profound wisdom. And at the same time, we can see that the sophists were like growing angry, and they were not appreciating his methods. They felt threatened. And as they felt threatened, a lot of things which happened at that time eventually fell against Socrates. So Socrates was charged with impiety. What is impiety? So impiety is when you're not worshipping the gods that the state is worshipping. You're not worshipping the ideals. You're not following the ideals which the state is believing. So he was charged with impiety. So basically, what happened? There was a war that had taken place, and what happened was that the sea route and the land route got disconnected, because of which the food supply and the supply of arms and ammunition got disrupted, because of which the army lost the war. There was a tradition in Athens, Greece, that if the army loses the war, the army head will be hanged unto death. All the army generals or people who are leading the army from different fronts, they will be hanged unto death. So when the trial started, everyone started cursing the army heads. But as I told you just few minutes back, that Socrates himself was associated with army, and he had been associated with military training. He questioned this decision. He said that when the land route itself was dissociated, and the war was going on, and from the sea route all attack was coming, and if the food was not getting supplied, if arms and ammunition was not getting supplied to the army men, how could they fight? How could they win the war? So is it ethical to hang them to death? So this led to questioning the state and the state's decision making. So everyone said, oh, this man is anti-national, this man is anti-state. And when this thought started getting established that he's anti-national, he's anti-state, a negative sentiment started getting generated, and other charges were also slapped upon him, and he underwent trial. When Socrates underwent trial, then whether he is, there was a debate, social debate, that how far he is correct and the logic he is speaking, how far it is correct. You'll be surprised, many people believed what Socrates was saying was correct. But when the voting was to be cast by a hairline margin, it was the sophists who had won, and Socrates lost. When Socrates lost, when he lost, it was given as a thought, it was given as a statement to him that if he apologizes for his standpoint and his intellectual perspectives, if he apologizes and takes the words back, he will be allowed to live. If he does not apologize, he will be given we can say, a bowl of poison which he'll drink, and finally he'll die. So Socrates, being a man of integrity, he said, no, I'll stand with my ideas unto my death. If my body lives, but I have to kill my conscience, I have to kill my intellectual integrity, then I have actually already died. And the people who believed in my ideals and values, they will also lose faith in me. So I cannot risk it at all. So he said that he won't go ahead with any such initiative, and he denied the possibility of seeking forgiveness. So after that, you see that Plato, who was his disciple, he got highly disillusioned with democracy. He believed that it is democracy, or the rule of the people, which has led to the death of an intellectual like Socrates. That's why everyone is not capable of rationally thinking and should not be allowed to vote. And that's why you see that Plato writes quite bitterly and negatively about democracy. And his disciple Aristotle also carries the similar sentiment in his work. And that's how you see that they believe that not everyone ought to be allowed to vote, because democracy, when it is like running through not the intellectuals but the commoners who are not so educated, then it becomes mobocracy. Mobocracy is the rule of mob. So that's why we see that Plato is not we can say having a favorable stand towards democracy. And it is like Socrates who, because of his uncompromising stand, he gave a great example to human civilization why it is important to uphold our intellectual integrity. Okay, that is going to shape the ideals of later day thinkers from Voltaire, Rousseau, John Locke. All these people you see are getting inspired by what Socrates says, what Socrates stood for when we speak of the same thing. Thank you, SME, for supporting in between. So when we are speaking of this given dimension, we all can see that when we are talking about, and that's why it's so important to know the thinkers in person and their lives in person. Then you understand which ideology they are standing for and why and how. So people who don't understand why Plato is not supporting democracy or Aristotle is not supporting democracy, there is an intellectual reason. There is a rational reflection and associated with their lives, associated with what they experienced on ground, which shaped their choices and their possibilities accordingly. Anyway, when we are further speaking of it, so before Socrates' execution, we see that his friends, they bribed the guards and they wanted to rescue him and rescue him from exile. So Socrates declined. He said that I'm not afraid of death. What I'm afraid of is the real ideas ought not to be killed. Okay, so he said that it's better off that I die rather than letting my ideas die, my reasoning die, and people losing faith. So Socrates, his execution takes place in the Phaedo dialogue. Plato discusses it in his play when you are reading about it, and you see that Socrates, he drank the hemlock mixture, hemlock as it is called, HEMLOCK. So the hemlock mixture, he died slowly and steadily. First his organs started turning numb, and finally his heart turns numb. And you can understand Socrates how deeply spiritual he was, that before his death he describes his death that now my soul is releasing from the body. And that's something which you reflect in his philosophy, that he continuously gives importance to the soul over the body, the intellect over the body. So he says that now my soul is getting released from the body. There are a lot of important, we can say, quotations associated with Socrates. You must have heard few of them. The unexamined life is not worth living. Or you can think of this given statement that wisdom is knowing how little we know. Further, we can see that false words are not only evil in themselves, but they also infect our soul with evil. Okay. Again, wisdom begins in wonder, the smallest but the best, which I really like. Wisdom begins in wonder, because when we are curious, when we ask, it is only then that we learn. When we don't accept facts on the face value, when you question and interrogate what's happening, why is it happening, and how is it happening, it is then that we have a tendency to learn. Okay, so Socrates, when we are discussing about him, a man of ultimate courage, who is not running away from his rights, who is remaining in the post and fighting like a real warrior, like a real whaler, a person full of real valor. Okay, so he says that it's not living that matters, it is living rightly that truly matters. All those possibilities you can connect from his life when we are talking about him. Yes, so Socrates was executed by the state, not democrat. When you say democrat, you make it political in nature, as if a political party is doing that. It is the state which executed Socrates on the order of the state. All right. So Sophist and Socrates were two contradictory forces. Yes, they were two contradictory forces in the Athenian society. Okay, in terms of how logic was in associated with it. Socrates' idea of soul can be directly related to Bhagavad Gita. Yes, that is also possible. So, having in depth insight of these philosophers' thoughts confers us with the opportunity to foster deep sense in every aspect of life. So true, Devansh. And that's the purpose. That's the purpose of this paper, that it leaves you thinking and curious about the purpose. When a person is thinking, a thinking individual and a curious individual, the person will develop the sense of righteousness emanating as a light from within, illuminated from within, not as a chapter taught by a teacher. We can just kindle the fire. When you ignite it and when you let it stay with your logic and reason, you never suffer from ethical dilemma in pressing situations. You know how always to stand with the right set of values and ethics. And that is the kind of civil servant that we need in the system. So this is just kindling that fire inside you. All the damage that might have been done by moistening your soul by the society, by the family members, by the neighborhood, by the educational institution, all that fact needs to be undone. And undoing it is by triggering you to think rationally. Okay? So, and that's why I told you that majority of you are struggling, because this discipline was never there as a part of your syllabus in your academic career, in till school or even in college. That's why getting introduced to it creates uncertainty, because you have never lived thinking at this level, like reflecting at this level. So it creates uncertainty. Huh? Why is it not clear cut, point wise, bullet wise, like, facts which we can just cram and know, and certain definitions, examples. It is something which is pushing you to think. If you don't think, you cannot connect with this discipline. And when you're thinking, you're like, oh my God, it's not about subject, it's about life. It's about how I'm living and how I ought to live. It is more than just a discipline or a subject related to civil services exam. And that's the breakthrough, which is like expected to be created by the we can say the academicians who were referred to by UPSC for creating this syllabus, and by us, the teachers, who try to create a breakthrough via our, we can say, insights and perspectives we try to empower you with. Okay, how far is it practical to use such ideology in today's life? It is like associated when we are talking about it, Labdi. Continuously you can connect it with chapter 1, ethical relativism, ethical universalism, connected with civil services values. So he has stood for his intellectual integrity, and integrity has been taught to you. Okay, so start connecting that way. You can join the dots bit by bit. So, okay, now as we are moving ahead, SME, please support me with the queries. I'm just explaining Socrates' concepts. So, Socrates, he is a virtue ethicist, okay, and he considers that knowledge is the most important thing in this world. We cannot like compromise with knowledge at any given level. It is just not possible for us to compromise with knowledge in any given subsegment when we are talking about it. So, when we are reflecting upon what Socrates believed, he is saying that no one knowingly does what is bad. Okay, so he believes that it is very important for us to be curious to know what's happening and what ideally ought to happen. Okay, so the question of moral intellectualism is something which he is indulging in. There's a statement given by Socrates that I know because I know that I know nothing. I know means the possibility of knowledge being there. So I know, the sense of realization is there. So I know means I realize, I understand. The knowledge is there with me. So I know, because why do I know? How can I claim that I have the wisdom, I have the understanding, I have the knowledge? Because I know that I know nothing. Because I understand. I know means I understand that I know nothing. In the world of wisdom, you enter any library and ask yourself how much you know. You'll understand the triviality of your wisdom and facts that you have collected so far in a lifetime. So that sense of triviality, when we accept it, it makes us humble. Okay, and when we are humble, then we are capable to learn. An arrogant person can never learn. An arrogant person like, I know enough, right? So the doors get blocked. The possibility to learn gets locked. Only when we are able to like consider that yes, we don't know anything. Who is going to empower us and with what set of ideas? It is then that we get exposed to idea of learning. So first we can say first the humbleness to accept. When you are humble to accept ignorance, when you are humble to accept ignorance, then arises the need. After the need to learn, then there has to be curiosity or the will to learn. So will to learn. With the will to learn, when we are speaking of it, then comes the curiosity. What all am I missing so far? So curiosity to learn. So curiosity to learn. And when you have curiosity to learn, it is then that you attain knowledge, according to Socrates. Okay. So, like you can see that why do we sit next to someone else's feet? So we, like whenever we have to learn, remember Ramayana, there's this person like Ravana is dying and Lakshmana goes because Ram says, go, such a wise man is going to die. So take some pearls of wisdom from him before his death. And as Lakshmana goes, he stand next to his head. And then Ravana keeps quiet. So he's like, he did not say anything. Then Rama said, where were you standing? He's like, next to his head. He's like, you never stand next to someone's head when you have to learn something. Go and stand next to the feet. So when he stood next to the feet and requested for the last pearls of wisdom, it is then that Ravana spoke. Same is when Krishna is sleeping and Kauravas and Pandavas, they reach to seek his support in the war. So you see that Kaurava, when he is going, and the Pandavas when they go, so Kaurava, that is the head of Kaurava, Duryodhan, he stands next to Krishna's head, and Arjuna, he stands next to Krishna's feet. So as Krishna opens his eyes, he first sees Arjuna, and then he gives the choice. He's like, okay, both have come to seek support. So then he gives the choice that I will give you both the choice to seek my support. Both shall get my support because both have come. But because the one whom I saw first shall get the first priority to choose what they need. So when it was raised like before Arjuna, that what do you need? So he said, I need you, Krishna. You should be there in my favor, in our favor. And he's like, okay. And then Duryodhana becomes very happy because he needed the army and the army support. So he said, what did you need? So he said, I needed the army. He's like, yes, the army is all yours. And that is how Krishna comes up with the division. So you can understand, when we are seeking intellectual inspiration, we need to know how to seek wisdom. Okay. So when we are talking about this idea of wisdom, Socrates discusses about it. He says that when we are talking about the idea of wisdom, he said that first and foremost, accept ignorance. After accepting ignorance, then you, if I speak of it, then you become humble. After becoming humble, then you come up with gaining knowledge. After gaining knowledge, what happens? Okay, this is written little. So you gain knowledge. After gaining knowledge, what happens? So you develop virtues. Develop virtues. After developing virtues, what happens? So you develop wisdom. And with wisdom, what happens? You attain happiness. This is the idea of happiness shared by Socrates. Okay. So he says that true happiness, okay, true happiness comes from true relationships, comes from true relationships. Rather than money or fame. So rather than money or fame, it comes from true relationships when we are speaking of it. And the basic concept of happiness, when we speak of it, so like it, happiness plays a very vital role in ancient philosophy. You will be seeing that in ancient moral philosophy, it is considered that the quest is about happiness. So what is happiness? So happiness is a positive emotion. It is the feeling of pleasant, good, right? And it is something which every human being is seeking. It is the endeavor of every human being when we speak of it, right? So when we are seeking about this given idea of happiness, we can connect it in two ways. So happiness, it is like two ways that we can attain, two ways we can define this given possibility. So first is associated with the feeling of joy and contentment, feeling of joy and contentment, right? And we can also connect it with the second meaning, which is associated with happiness interpreted as an activity. So happiness interpreted as an activity or a way, or we can consider a tendency to act, okay, or a result, a tendency to act or a result, okay, rather than an emotion, rather than an emotion. So rather than considering it as an emotion, it is more associated with the act, how we are acting upon a situation. So that act is generating happiness, okay, the result when we are speaking of it, okay. So philosophers, they took happiness as a way of life, okay. So in simpler words, we can say that happiness is a way of life. It is an act that you are living. So it is a way of life when we are speaking of it. It is related to a virtuous life. And when I say like way of life, it is virtuous life. The virtuous life, the correct life that you live, okay. It is like, when we are speaking of happiness, it is an end in itself. It is the goal. It is an end in itself. You can consider in Eastern philosophy, in India, what was the end in itself? Moksha. In Hinduism, moksha. In Buddhism, it was nirvana, right? In Jainism, there was kaivalya. Similarly, in Western society, when we are talking about Western philosophy, it was associated with virtuous living, that you are living a virtuous life, and that virtuous life is an end in itself. It is a goal in itself. And this virtuous living, the righteous living, is generating happiness. Okay, that is something which is creating happiness. So what is true happiness? So true happiness is like sleeping in your own like bed, in your own home, wearing your own clothes. Okay, that is the idea when we are speaking of it. And you can see Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, all of them are resorting to this second perception, this second this virtuous living, uh, as the, we can say, the way of understanding what happiness is. Whether it is Plato, whether it is Aristotle, whether it is Socrates, they all are talking about this given possibility. Okay. There is also, there is a concept called anhedonia that is associated with psychology. When you stop feeling, experiencing pleasure in different activities, I think civil services aspirants sometimes suffer from anhedonia. I see on the street, it is raining, the child is very silently picking a packet of maybe some fruits or vegetables or some books, and like just going silently, just like, going, like if there are clouds, rather than being joyous and jubilant about clouds, seeing it and thinking that, oh, cumulonimbus, so it is going to rain. So rather than celebrating nature and the possibility of existence, the very possibility of reflecting upon what's happening around them has become too much like dry, too much anxiety struck, too much stressed. So don't live the life like a corpse, okay? Keep enjoying and celebrating the preparation by virtuously completing your daily targets and enjoying the possibility of, like, learning, unfolding the possibility of what is actually required in the moment as per the suitability of the possibilities. So I've given Socrates method, that he believe, like he begins with how a person learns to doubt, and through the doubt a person is able to express one's cherished beliefs. and dogmas means beliefs, okay, and also one's axioms. I've given the explanation what is a dogma, what is an axiom, so you can just like read it and you can understand. Again, he says that there is no real philosophy until the mind is examining itself. Means you should have that curiosity to make an inquiry. If you're making the inquiry yourself, it is then that you arrive at the wisdom, the world of wisdom, okay. Again, we can see that his methods of discussions were involving, they were associated with a series of questions that were associated with, like, destroying any kind of pretension pertaining to knowledge, okay. So that's how you can connect with Socrates method when we are speaking of it. Again, when we are talking about the teachings of Socrates, it can be roughly divided into four possibilities. One is the importance he attaches to knowledge. Second is pursuit of virtue. You can now connect it with happiness, right? So importance being attached to knowledge, then pursuit of virtue. Virtue is giving happiness, right? Then moderate living, frugal living, which in other words, frugal means, does not mean that you're struggling. I mean, minimizing your material assets, okay, and spiritual development. These are the four aspects which determines like Socrates for all of us, and that's how you understand, like, his we can consider pearls of wisdom that gives us an idea about what is the right conduct or right way to live. So first and foremost, we can see that he is believing that knowledge is something which is actualizing itself in action, because then when we explore how far the knowledge is correct, it is then that we are enacting upon the knowledge, we are reflecting upon the knowledge, and right knowledge leads us to right action. So a person who is guided by the right knowledge can never indulge in any kind of wrong deeds, can never indulge in any kind of incorrect patterns of deeds, right? So highest form of knowledge is associated with what is good, what is evil. And when we are speaking of this given dimension, we can understand that no one is associated with like our ideas pertaining to what is good, what is bad, what is right, what is wrong, okay. People, they tend to commit wrong things on the basis of ignorance, when they don't have an idea that what is right thing. It is then that we tend to do like wrong things. So it's better that people inquire before believing in specific knowledge. They should first inquire, how right is it, how important it is for me, and should I follow it or not, okay. So that is how you have a tendency to create a virtuous possibility of existence, or imparting the right set of knowledge when we are speaking of it, all right. Again, in terms of this, when we are talking about it, the pursuit of virtue, when we are like seeking what is virtuous life, what is the idea of virtue, what is virtue in itself, what is, like, what do we imply by the term virtue? So virtue is the most worthwhile pursuit of human being. What is pursuit? Search. And he preferred pleasure of self improvement. This is the idea of happiness, okay. So when you are looking for self improvement rather than indulgence, carnal pleasure, material pleasure, okay, pleasure of senses, rather than that, when you are seeking pleasure and happiness in self improvement, that is the virtuous living. When you are living with wisdom, it is that is virtuous living, that this virtue is leading to happiness. When there is moral inquiry, why we should live like this, what ought to be done, how we need to live and survive, that is something which is leading to our virtuous existence, okay. So true happiness can be attained by living a moral life. When we are living a moral life, it is then that we are able to attain true happiness, when we speak of it, right? Then we can further see moderate living, as I was saying, that he was saying that let us not give up on ordinary pleasure. Let's not, because physical pleasure is a hindrance to spiritual growth. He advocated mild asceticism, means have minimal needs, okay. You'll see majority of the people who are quite evolved philosophers, thinkers, you will they will inspire you with a level of asceticism. They will encourage that materialism is a bane, it is something which is creating sin in your life, it is unnecessarily creating chaos in your life. So to cut down on material needs, cut down on material, we can say, necessities, minimalism is the way. And when you are focusing on minimalism, you leave also less garbage for the world once you die. And more importantly, you are into like those things which are very necessary for your comfortable survival, easy survival, but it is not something which is adding to, we can say, luxury. So like shoes are necessary, but having 10 shoes is unnecessary. That's what. Clothes are necessary, but having like some like 500 odd pairs is unnecessary. In the similar manner, like I hope you all are getting the idea, so I don't need to explain this further. Spiritual development. So Socrates, I told you, he believed in the idea of soul. So he believed human soul is invisible, immortal, and it has a lot of bearing upon our existence. So soul is divine, body is mortal, and soul is the one which is making our body alive. Once the soul moves out of the body, death occurs. That's what. And that's why one should always work for the strengthening of the soul. Okay, fixing the soul, strengthening the soul. Because when your soul is strengthened, it guides you to virtuous deeds. What is right, what is wrong? The soul guides us to that given possibility, the virtuous deeds. Okay. So I hope all of you are understanding Socrates in totality. Okay. All of you are connecting with Socrates. He is considered as the first eccentric. Probably I should note this word also down. Okay. So, no, here maybe. Considered as the first eccentric. You can look for the word in the dictionary later. Who is an eccentric? So he is considered as the first eccentric because he is the person who is giving the statement that an unexamined life is not worth living. Okay, so you get inspired by him. Gandhiji called him the first satyagrahi. Okay, because he sacrificed his life for um, intellectual integrity. So Gandhiji said he is the first satyagrahi. So that's how you can connect with like Socrates in totality, right? So let us take a break, a 15 minutes break. It is 7:45, 15 minutes break, and let us be back with Plato and Aristotle and then question answers for today. Okay, so that's what. Next thinker would be Plato. Plato, who wrote like the Republic when we are talking about him. Plato, if I reflect very briefly associated with his life, you can see this quotation that has been picked: good action gives strength to ourselves and inspire good action in another's. It's like simple, and it is something which should inspire you. So with respect to this, when we are talking about Plato, a brief biography if you want to know. He is a student of Socrates, born in 427 BC. He is a son of a very wealthy and influential Athenian, and then he we can say that he, like when Socrates died, Plato, he's traveling to Egypt and Italy. He's studying with the students of Pythagoras, and we can say he's spending several years outside, by also getting associated or advising the family of Syracuse. Again, in 386 BC, he's returning to Athens and he's founding his own university, which is considered the first university of the Western world, the Academy. So, the Academy is like the, we can say, educational institution or the school of learning for philosophy by Plato. So Aristotle is his most famous disciple, and Plato, he provides his concepts associated with idea of virtue because he is inspired by Socrates. So you'll realize a lot of his ideas are quite similar to that of, we can consider, quite similar to that of Socrates. So whatever Socrates has spoken is nothing but the articulation of language by Plato. That's why there is a similarity. So he will be talking about virtue and knowledge. He will be saying virtue is teachable and we can learn morality. We can learn it like any other subject. And in the process, he is talking about the four cardinal virtues. What are the four cardinal virtues? So there's wisdom, valor, temperance, justice. Okay. Wisdom is related to reason. Valor is associated with courage and it is connected to the spirit. And we can see temperance is associated with control, self-control. In simpler terms, it is related to self-control. Okay. And when we are speaking of justice, it is the harmonizing of the three, like wisdom, valor, temperance, you harmonize the three, you have justice. Okay. So this given concept associated with his four cardinal virtues or fourfold cardinal virtues, you can get direct questions from these areas. So understand it very thoroughly, and as I draw diagrams, please try to understand. Okay. Again, with respect to this idea of happiness, when we are talking about it, so Socrates, remember, if he is a rationalist, Plato is a rationalist. If Socrates is talking about happiness, Plato is talking about happiness. Socrates is a like virtue ethicist, Plato is a virtue ethicist. If Socrates is believing in moral intellectualism, so is Plato. So there is a continual sense of, we can say, understanding associated with what they say. So we can connect their idea of like four cardinal virtues from this specific diagram, which I'm going to draw for all of you. So when we are speaking of this given possibility, you all are reflecting upon prudence or wisdom, right? Prudence or wisdom. You are reflecting upon courage or fortitude, which is also valor. So valor, or you call it courage, or you call it fortitude. And then we have temperance, right? And all these three clubbed together is creating justice. So prudence, valor, temperance, and justice. That's how you can connect. Now, if I'm talking about this idea of prudence, prudence is coming from what? So it is coming from logic. Logic is something which is leading to the possibility of prudence, right? Again, when we are speaking of this component of courage, courage is coming from emotions. When you learn how to regulate your emotions, it is then that you become courageous. Okay. And when we are speaking of, like, let's say temperance, it is when you learn how to control your desires or your appetite. Desires or appetite. So how do we see? So this leads to temperance. Okay. So how do we see the possibility of a society experiencing justice? So when the rajas, tamas, we can see sattva, all the gunas are clubbed together. That's how we can see the guna theory in India, as it was connected to the like varna system. Anyway, so we can connect it over here with the idea of king. The king who is based on logic. So the idea of philosopher king, that's what we all know, right? The army should exercise courage. So army is associated with being passionate about serving the country, and that is something which should exercise courage. Okay. So valor, courage, fortitude. And then we have the component associated with citizen. So citizen is associated with the component of controlling desire. He also compared it with metals. So he said, like, reasoning is logic because greatest importance is given to the mind, so it is associated with gold. Controlling emotions, regulating emotions is related to silver. And regulating appetite, controlling appetite is associated with copper, right? So this is what all of you can connect with. Okay. So that's what you connect it, and then you understand that the proportion of it is something which is generating justice. So these are the four cardinal principles or the four cardinal virtues when we speak of it. Okay, as you all can connect with this. So further, we can also speak of distributive and punitive justice. Who had asked that? Okay, so Abhishek, I have discussed the idea of justice related to Plato and Aristotle quite exhaustively. In fact, that's your homework. If you reflect upon it, you will be finding this subcomponent associated with, wait up, just showing it. So Aristotle's idea of justice in Nicomachean Ethics. Okay. So Nicomachean Ethics, as it is called, Nicomachean, I said, Nicomachean Ethics. So Nicomachus, if you see, it was the name of his father as well as his son. So some consider that it is written for his son, some consider it is an ode to his father. Now whatever. So Aristotle's idea of justice It is given already for all of you to read as a homework, and there is a lot of insight which has been incorporated in this material. So you see his idea of narrow justice, broad justice. Along with that, I've given you a lot of insights to reflect upon, like what he considers justice to be, how it is a means of opposites. Okay, so a lot of segments which can be associated with the idea of justice has been consolidated. Even a comparison is given when we speak of justice. I have given you a comparison between like Aristotle and Plato. So Aristotle versus Plato on the idea of justice, that is also something which you can see it is given. Okay, and that's how you will be like reading this and building upon your concepts pertaining to the idea of justice. Okay, so you can find like a sizable number of pages have been devoted for this idea of justice. When I say that I have given you like enough content, this is something which you can see and you can reflect and like build upon your insights, right? So almost 10 slides have been dedicated for this purpose of the component of justice, right? Now getting back to it, so those like Abhishek, you can read that and develop your insight pertaining to, just like rather than a brief overview, what is justice? Because I felt a question can be asked. You are going to be a civil servant. So a civil servant is supposed to upkeep justice at all times. So what if the idea of justice gets connected? Happiness has already been asked, and we are like discussing about happiness. But justice needs some careful reading as well, some detailed reading as well. Okay, so material pleasure means like connected to commodities. When you are seeking pleasure from objects, goods, okay, from things, that is material pleasure. Fine. Okay, so asceticism is vairagya. So now anyway, we are, as we are discussing about like Plato, and as I'm substantiating about Plato, so with respect to him, the fundamental thoughts, if we connect with Plato, so in this given segment I was discussing about the diagram. So here you can also talk about like the unity of virtues, that's also there. Many people like unity of virtues, and under unity of virtues you can probably draw this diagram even in exam, where you write wisdom, you write temperance, you write courage, you write justice, and you connect it with all. Okay, when you connect it with all, so that is something which is generating a sense of clarity with what is being experienced, right? This is what, this is the concept of unity of virtues. So you can develop this, and that is how you can explain. And then like he's discussing that first and foremost we need integrity. He is also discussing about the concept of integrity, and he's saying that with integrity what happens? Compassion comes. Compassion comes. So we need to like exercise all these virtues in totality, and with that we'll have compassion. With compassion, better governance, harmonizing the possibility. Okay, so when we are talking about Plato's model of a just state, it is more like I'll probably explain this. Plato's model of just state. So Plato's model of just state, when we are discussing about it, so his model of just state is associated with, okay, so his model of just state is associated with we can say a healthy organism. Healthy organism, how there is interdependence in the functioning of the organism. In the similar manner, justice is there in the state on the whole when all the parts are working in a harmonized fashion. Okay, so with a healthy organism, so all parts function for the benefit of the whole, for the benefit of the whole, right? And the whole is benefiting the parts, the wholesome. Okay, the whole benefits the parts, right? So from here he is coming up with his model of harmonious functioning. Okay, so he gives model of harmonious functioning, harmonious functioning. And when we are talking about the model of harmonious functioning, we can see that it is based on three principles, based on three principles. And what are the three principles? So first principle is associated with, we can consider like teamwork. Okay, so teamwork. In teamwork, you are doing your own work, not interfering with the work of others. That is what he implied by teamwork. Like an organism, the head works separately, eyes, like lips, tongue, hand, leg, everything is working independently and not interfering with the functioning of the other. And that's why every organ is able to function smoothly. Okay, so that's how. Second, he is saying obedience. Obedience to the final authority, obedience to the king, he is what he is saying. King here implies, we can say, authority. When we are talking about it. So first is teamwork. So teamwork can be subdivided into, wait, why did I write two? So first is teamwork, and teamwork is something which we can connect it with obedience. We can connect it with non-interference with others' work, non-interference with others' work, and also loyalty. Loyalty. With this comes teamwork. Okay. After teamwork, when we speak of it, the second sub-dimension can be associated with the principle of equality. Principle of equality. And this principle of equality, as you know, it is based on justice and fairness, based on fairness, justice. You all know these principles already. And then the third component, which is associated with leadership. Leadership. So leadership, when we are speaking of it, people accept the leadership and directions of the philosopher king. People accept the leadership and directions of the philosopher king. Philosopher king. Right. So this is his concept associated with, we can say, harmonizing the function. So harmonious function, the model, and it's based on three principles. One is teamwork, second is principles of equality, and third is leadership. All right. So this is what we can understand. Yeah, the state is an individual writ large. So very true. So, and I appreciate that you are able to arrive at this. Instead of citizens, bronze type people should be producers. They have appetite. Citizens means army plus king. No, citizens does not mean army plus king. It is associated with commoners, Abhishek. It is related to commoners. Okay. Now, moving further ahead, please help Vaishnavi. She is having some technical glitch, SME. Now, so fundamental thoughts of Plato I have thus enlisted, which all of you have gone through. So he is associated with moral values. He is saying that only citizens of an ideal state can be moral. So, and he's also saying that people are governed by emotions and prejudices rather than reasoning and fair play. Okay, so it should be always reasoning and fair play when we speak of it. And in democracy, people elect the people whom they like and not the best ones. That's why he never supported democracy, and it should be only the philosophers who should rule the world, the intellectuals who should rule the world, so that fairness and equality is exercised at all times, logic is exercised, exploitation of people is put under check. So knowledge of the perfect world and work selflessly to create such a world is the aspiration of Plato. All right. With this, we step to another thinker, that is Aristotle. When I speak of Aristotle, we can reflect upon this introduction related to Aristotle, that he was born in 384 BC in Greece. His father is a court physician of Macedonian king. He has lost his parents at a young age. He studied under Plato for 20 years at the academy, okay, his Plato's university. Further, we see that he goes to Macedonia and he is requesting King Philip to tutor his son, and he becomes like we can say tutor of Alexander the Great, and that is how he is becoming the mentor of Alexander the Great. He is also discussing about virtues. Because you will see there is virtue ethicist. We called Socrates, Plato and Aristotle virtue ethicists because they are dealing with virtues. So he is discussing about two types of virtues: intellectual virtues and ethical virtues. So intellectual virtues are associated with values of intellect when we speak of it. And what are values of intellect? Values of intellect will come from reasoning. When you are giving importance to reasoning, so through reasoning you are, and through contemplation, you are able to develop a sense of what is right, what is wrong, and accordingly indulge in it. Whereas when we are talking about ethical virtues, it is associated with our action. Okay, action which is associated with we can say when we suppress our material desires, objective desires. Okay, so you are suppressing the human passion and you are giving importance to reason. Okay, so passion, human desire, appetite, you suppress it and you are relating your action to reason. Okay, the reason is leading to the action. It is then that ethical virtues prevail. So intellectual and ethical virtues together is creating happiness. So intellectual plus ethical virtues equals to happiness. So reasoning should always be in tune with the ethics of the society. This is what he is considering, or this is what he is like stating. So ethics or ethical virtues, when we are talking about it, it is related to control of emotion with reason. You can see that reflection of Plato. Plato was talking about this same thing, temperance, remember? So and it like fortitude, remember? So fortitude was courage, and courage was when you're controlling and regulating your emotion. Similarly, Plato also spoke of controlling our desires and appetite via temperance, and he is also talking of the same thing. So there's a similarity and continuity in their philosophies and insights. This is something which you can see. Again, he's saying that knowledge is not enough to make a person virtuous, since like control of passion is quite tough. So other than knowledge, what else do we need? So along with knowledge, we need self discipline. Self discipline, like for example, I know that I should not eat too many sweets. Okay, but I really have a big sweet tooth. So anytime I get an opportunity, like yesterday was Sunday, so it was like I was relatively relaxed. So one of my friends invited me for a treat. So when I went to this place, this was more like a buffet restaurant. So a buffet meal was there. So I was not interested much to eat like a lot of things. So I just had the starters, and after starters I straightway skipped to like sweet dish because I did not want my stomach to get like crowded with main course. I did not want to have main course. So I just saw everything in main course. I was like, wow, wow, sab sundar hai. Everything is looking so pretty. But I did not want to waste my stomach, because I have a fair sense of consumption. It's neither too much, it's not too frugal also. So whatever space I have in my stomach, I wanted it to occupy with sweets. So I started taking all kinds of like sweets, whatever was there in display, all 15 categories in my plate, two plates rather, and then eating it and feeling so happy. Now this is lack of self discipline. What I did, so what I did today I was just completely on a fruit diet. I was like, I'll just maintain a fruit diet, means just having papaya or something like that till late evening, like as of now. Just now I just had little bite of something, because if I have eaten yesterday a lot, that will create imbalance to my stomach. So my stomach needs to breathe. So having water till 12 o'clock, self disciplining, so 4 o'clock to 12 just on water, then having a bit of papaya at 12:30, and that too I regretted. Why did I have papaya? Just a bit of papaya, and then finish the rest of the papaya at like 4:30 before your class. So this self disciplining is also essential to have an ethical living, where you have balance of your existence. So not just knowledge. I have knowledge, I should have a regulated meal plan. And suppose despite that someone is into hedonistic pleasure, consumer items, just going on and on, eating or using things, that will create imbalance of personality, imbalance of existence, right? So Alexander had ruled with unethical behavior. So very true, Payal. I do not deny that. And that's why if you really meet educated people from Austria, they don't take pride in remembering Alexander. And we can say, but in earlier times, you see, a king who gained a lot of eminence only when the king was into expedition, into, we can consider, different types of exploration of different regions and control of territories, right? So to each king, when we are talking about this idea, um, this is what we can consider. I mean, that day I was reading about Chengiz Khan and the millions of people he butchered across the world, like all the way from Mongolia as he moved to India. In the process, how many people he killed? Then I thought, the millions of people he killed, if they were not eliminated, how much more global population would have been there, especially in this Asian region of China and India. So, like, when you actually reflect upon nature, there's a very strange way of it balancing the possibility of existence. So there will be people who will be completely disastrous for human existence, and there will be people who will be supporting the human existence. And in the world of philosophy, then you ask that what is right, what is wrong. So the answer you get is there is nothing absolutely right or wrong. What is really to be pursued is a virtuous living. You will live a virtuous living and aspire for being virtuous, and that is the, we can consider, yes, Genghis Khan was like father of Hitler only. So that is how you understand this given possibility. So no, 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 Grishma, that is not ASMR eating. I think that is one of the ways how this self-discipline is devastated in nowadays times. Anyway, so when we are talking about Aristotle, he is talking about how to practice virtuous conduct and how to make it a habit. And when it is a habit, when with training and habituation, it is then that we are able to attain excellence. Okay, so excellence is not an act, excellence is a habit, right? So excellence is a habit. So when we are talking about ethics, ethics is in pursuit of excellence, and we attain excellence in a phase-based manner. So first, what do? We control emotion. After controlling emotion, we should have knowledge. After having knowledge, we should have self-discipline. After self-discipline, we should have practice, and all of it leads to a habit. The habit, okay? So with training and habituation, when we are speaking of it, so training and habituation, it is then that we achieve excellence, okay? It is then that we achieve excellence. So no, 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 I'm not justifying Genghis Khan. Oh my God. I'm not even distantly trying to justify Genghis Khan. I just cannot even in my distant dreams talk about it. I'm just saying that ethics in its relativism will not consider anything in absolute. It will always say that anything that is happening, like in any form, will have an alter perspective to it, will have an alter reality to it. Understanding this, Vishal? So you cannot be like too deterministic, too absolute about an opinion. That's what ethics will talk about. Remember, like homos mensura given by Stoics. So whatever man is doing, it has to be understood from the perspective of man, why it is correct or not. And this statement came when I said Alexander. He is incorrect from our ethical standards, definitely. A lot of Austrians from where like Alexander is, they also do not appreciate Alexander as quote unquote the great. They do not consider him great. There's a lot of debate in that society as in whether Alexander is great or not. So all that is also there when you speak of it, right? In Jainism, the source is innocent. Yes, yes. Now, so when we are talking about Aristotle, we understand that there is nothing like absolute moral good, absolute moral standard. Like morality is something which is based on our day to day life reality. It is based on the reality associated with our human nature, about our human existence, how we are unfolding our life on day to day basis. That's what you can consider, right? And when we are talking about ethics, it is ethics that is connecting us to applied science or practical science, giving us not knowledge for the sake of knowledge, but knowledge for the sake of purpose of application of rationality, application of logic, and how with that logic we can attain excellence, okay? So that is what we can see the concept of Aristotle when we are discussing about it. And there only you can see he is giving the concept of summum bonum. Okay, so his idea of summum bonum, as you can see, summum bonum, if I reflect upon this, the concept of summum bonum, it is differing, like it is associated with the idea of right can differ from individual to individual. Okay, so he wrote his we can say this book Rhetoric. So in rhetoric, this concept is given in 4th century, this concept of summum bonum. Okay, and in which he is discussing about this idea of summum bonum. This is a Roman philosopher Cicero who is talking about Cicero, the Roman philosopher, who is talking about it for the first time, this idea of summum bonum. Okay, and maybe I should not keep this word rhetoric too close. So rhetoric, this is Aristotle. Okay, and through this he is talking about the idea of highest good. What is the idea of highest good? What is the idea of highest good? So in which, do you remember his triangle, the rhetorical triangle, which I had discussed in the topic of emotional intelligence? Can everyone recall that rhetorical triangle? Was Aristotle playing like Chanakya of West? No, Aristotle was not Chanakya of West. That will be incorrect. If Chanakya is compared with anyone, it is Machiavelli, not Aristotle. Okay. Yes, very good, Sudipto and Montu. Yes, to a certain extent, Isha also. So Kavana, a lot of students are now like connecting. Abhishek, so you can connect it with, yes, we can consider ethos, pathos, and logos. So ethos, if you remember, was associated with character, virtues, right? Logos was associated with reason, information, facts. Pathos was associated with emotion, right? And all these three components were the components of the soul. So three components of the soul. And what was it? So the logic, which was associated with the cognitive aspect, right, which was associated with logos. Then the emotional aspect, and the emotion was associated with affective. So affective, that was emotion. And we can also connect it with ethos, which is associated with the character, right? So ethos, which was connected to character or virtues. And what is character or virtues? When we are able to control our desires, our behavioral aspect. So ethos, which was associated with, we can consider the behavioral, I mean, so it is associated with the behavioral aspect, if you can recall all this that has been already discussed. And that is something which we all can connect with control of desires, control of desires, in other words. Right. This was also discussed by me as the tripartite model of soul. Okay, the three components are tripartite model, right, of the soul. So you can connect and recall all these given segments associated with this possibility when we are talking about it, right? So logos, no, logos is associated with logic. There is an arrow. You cannot dissociate from the arrow. What is teleology? Abhinav, teleology is when you are focusing on the end, the goal. You don't focus on the means. I had given you the example in the first chapter when your approach is more like Subhash Chandra Bose. Even if I have to shake hands with Hitler, but if it is getting independence for India, it is worth it. Okay, so that's what, when we are talking about ends based or goal based approach. All right. So when we are speaking of this given possibility associated with he being the virtue ethicist, talking about moral and intellectual virtues, which we just discussed, we can also further connect it with this component. And we can see that Aristotle, he is believing in teleology. What is teleology? When we are focusing on the end, okay, the end purpose of everything, the goal, okay, the goal oriented approach, goal oriented. So the goal oriented approach. Okay, we can also connect it with all the things that are done with an end in mind, with a goal in mind. Shipbuilding, when we speak of it, so shipbuilding is done to make ship. Okay, economics is for wealth. Why do we study economics? It is for wealth. Why do we study medicine? It is for health. So all human activities, anything that we do, it is directed towards an end. And all ends, any kind of goal, any kind of like end we speak of it, it is associated with what? Summum bonum, means what is the final ultimate objective of living a human life or doing anything in human life. If that question is asked, if anyone is asking you that why you are doing that thing, so it is just for happiness. Okay, we do not, like, the aim of life is not goodness. We don't do things because it is good, because it is helping others, because it is for service. It is primarily for our own sake, because it is giving us happiness. Why charity? It is giving us happiness. Why langar seva? Because it is giving us happiness. Why donating books to the needy? Giving us happiness. Why helping the blind? Giving us happiness. So the idea of giving us happiness, that's the component associated with what we are discussing. So we all can see that when we are talking about the idea of happiness, it is never in view with other things. It is associated with honor, pleasure, intellect, all these perspectives that we are connecting these given dimension. We say that we are doing it for honor, we are doing it for intellect, we are doing it for pleasure, but the ultimate goal is happiness. Let me give you a simple example. Suppose if I say, suppose someone has joined gym and I said, why are you gymming? And the person is for getting a good body. And I'm like, oh, okay. And what will you do with a good body? You're like, I'll feel strong. I was like, wow. And by feeling strong, you're like, I'll feel happy. I'll feel that I can protect people. I'm like capable. So that's why I'll feel happy. I'm like, oh, so end goal is what? Happiness. Or someone says, I want a good body so that I can impress others. Everyone appreciates me. And what will happen if people are appreciating you? So you're like, I'll feel happy. So happiness, you can see, everyone is arriving at the answer associated with happiness, right? So that's what Aristotle says. We do things not to become virtuous, not to become moral, because not because we consider being moral is our ultimate end. No, any act which we do, even the moral acts, it is for the sake of attainment of pleasure or happiness, not pleasure, sorry, the attainment of happiness. So the doctrine is associated with happiness. He says we are doing anything and everything for the sake of happiness. Okay, so I hope all of you are understanding this. It is for happiness that we do everything. That's what Aristotle is saying. So then comes his concept of the golden mean. So he is saying that extreme of anything is a vice. Extreme of any possibility is a vice. So virtue is found, when we speak of it, virtue is found in the golden mean of the two extremes. So virtue, like, that should be maximized. When we speak of it, it can be associated with wisdom, truthfulness, impartiality, magnanimity. These are the four virtues which should keep growing. Okay, these are the four virtues which he says that it should keep growing. Okay, but what is his diagram? This is the diagram associated with the golden mean when we speak of it. Okay, so if I'm talking about, like, let's say the golden mean, this. So extremes, like, let us say, if someone is uh, fear and confidence. Okay, so with respect to fear and confidence, if someone is feeling fearful, then the person will experience cowardice, the person will be coward. And if a person is feeling overconfident, the person can become rash. Courage is the golden mean. that one needs to exercise. Okay. Similarly, if we are talking about someone is into spending, okay, so someone is getting money and spending. So if a person is too miserly, the person is mean or niggard, as you can see. And if the person is like we can say spending too much just for the sake of bling, then that is tastelessness. That's tasteless. So what is the balance? Magnificence. When your existence is exuberating magnificence. Okay. How we are behaving with others, disposition to others. So we are like, let's say, cantankerous. Now you're getting exposed to new words also, which you're supposed to learn. Okay, so cantankerous. And when we can consider when there is like less of that element of being nice to others. So we'll be cantankerous, very cranky, we'll be like arrogant, we'll be rude, we'll be like abusive, right? And if we are too, we can say, shy or timid, that's obsequiousness. Okay, so oh god, okay, so obsequiousness. Actually I use the word obsequiousness. The ness is adding to the problem anyway. So obsequiousness is the extreme end. What should be followed? Friendliness in moderation, everything in moderation. That's the component of golden mean when we speak of it. And this idea of golden mean you can again connect with the concept of, we can say, you can connect it with Buddha's, like we can say, like middle path, right? You can connect it with, other than Buddha's middle path, we can also connect it with the idea of justice as given by Plato, right? So this is something which is balancing our existence when we speak of it. Okay. So that is something which can be connected with this given idea. So with respect to this, again, if I'm talking about, a lot of examples actually can be given related to it. So in Mahabharata, Yudhishthira had a lot of guilt for killing his brothers, and he asked Krishna to say something, okay, that would relieve him, that would relax him. So Krishna said that the only person who can truly relieve you is Bhishma. Bhishma is dying in the battlefield on the bed of arrows, so you go and speak to him. So Yudhishthira and Bhishma, they have a very long conversation. And you know, in that conversation, there are a lot of pieces of wisdom, pearls of wisdom associated with governance. They discuss what is the idea of governance and what is the ideal or the best suited form of governance that should be followed. So most of the, like, you know, copies, you will see that there are 12 chapters of Mahabharata, but originally you can see there are 18 chapters. And anyway, so when we are talking about this given possibility, you will be finding that Yudhishthira, he laments before Bhishma for killing and doing so much of damage. To which Bhishma, imagine a man dying, okay, and breathing his last breath on the, like we can say, the bed of arrows. And bit by bit, he is like, you know, the blood is flowing out from his body, and slowly and steadily he is put to death. So this man, he says that the dharma of a political leader cannot be moral perfection. When we are talking about this idea of perfection and ideals and extreme ends, so he says that the dharma of a moral leader cannot be, oh sorry, a political leader. So dharma of a political leader cannot be moral perfection. It has to be the middle path. So too much of morality is also not good for governance. That is what he said when we are discussing about it. Okay. What do these heavy words mean? Dictionary is what it means, Anjali. I explained it, but still, if you are like getting stuck, use dictionary. Learn to use dictionary more frequently, because ask yourself that what have you done to the world of vocabulary in past 7-8 years. And with that level of vocabulary, you are going to create all the wisdom for the examination. Sorry, examiner. I spoke the right thing. Okay. Probably I'm just getting tired a bit. That's why. Okay, so with respect to this, when we are further like moving ahead with Aristotle's idea, you will be like, you know, in this Aristotle's idea of justice, again, I have provided you a lot of insight. So very briefly, if I speak of Aristotle's idea of justice, you will get exposed to the different patterns or forms of justice which he is talking about. So there are two types of justice: universal justice and particular justice. Universal justice, okay, is associated with the virtuous possibility, which is getting connected to, we can say, political justice and individual justice. So when we are talking about it, can you please repeat the sentence related to much of morality? Yeah, too much of morality is not possible in governance. Okay, one has to choose the middle path. And when we are talking about the middle path, Rashmi, it is associated with not always going moral, because in governance, at all times, a leader cannot always be moral. That's what the idea is about. Now, so with respect to this, maybe I can draw a diagram and bring in some clarity, and you can connect it with this idea of justice. Nicomachean justice. No, before. So, use this diagram to your level of understanding. The idea of justice, connect it with, I'm just drawing the diagram, basic diagram. Universal justice. Universal justice is connected to individual justice. Individual justice is associated with being virtuous. Being virtuous is connected to being moral. So, moral virtue and intellectual virtue, which we were discussing. So, moral and intellectual justice and virtuousness you can connect. Political justice. So, political justice is nothing but simply put obeying the law and order. Okay, so being obedient to law and order. Right. Again, with respect to this, we all can see that there is this component of particular justice. This is case by case method of solving the like component of a case. So, particular justice will be associated with distributive justice. In distributive justice, we all can connect it with social. Social justice is related to caste. Economic justice is associated with our class. I mean, social, because you won't understand. These are not international examples. I'm giving you some like local, regional examples so that you connect what he said with respect to social justice or economic justice. Social means it is associated with same social status, not economic status, same social status. And this is whereby we can consider economic distribution of resources is similar. So, economic distribution of resources is same. Right? Again, we all can connect it with we can say remedial justice. So, remedial or corrective. Okay. Or we can also say rectificationary. Rectificationary justice. Remedial or corrective or rectificationary justice, to which we can again break it into two subtypes, that is civil justice. It is against the individual, right? And we can connect it with criminal justice. And this is against the society. Against the society. Right. And another way of redefining, we can consider this remedial justice when we are talking about it. So, it is like a deterrent form of justice. It is related to proportional or retributive justice, right? And it is also connected to reformative, restorative or restitutive justice. And restitutive justice is like giving some kind of compensation, because you cannot correct the situation, but at least you can try to bring in some kind of compensation, right? Even Shashi Tharoor spoke of reparation. He spoke of, like, United Kingdom to give one token rupee or pound to India, just as a compensation. It's like a symbolic acceptance to the damage that it had caused to India. So that money will not make a difference, but that will act as a reparation. Reparation is for restitutive justice. When you cannot, like, provide full compensation to the damage, but it is symbolic enough to give a hyphenated reminder that what happened and how wrong it was considered under the light of law. For science student, it looks very unique to learn. Yes, yes, yes. When we are speaking of these patterns of justice, yes, political justice is the right to choose representative and to be elected by the representative. You can connect that idea as well. So the power of distributing virtues on the basis of law, order, what is right, what is wrong, that's also connected to political justice if we speak of it. All right. So I hope all of you are getting some idea. No, UK never gave that £1. Anyway, so there is something which I have given for all of you to connect with over here, like with respect to Aristotle's idea of justice. I told you that this is almost 10 slides, so finish it, okay, read it, finish it, understand it. It will be helpful for you to establish a wholesome understanding about the idea of justice, okay. That's something which, as I shared with all of you, that this is something as a homework which is expected from all of you, that you read and connect. And if there are any questions you feel like asking, you ask. Then comes the next sub-segment associated with, we all can see, the question and answers pertaining to Indian thinkers, how to deal with this given area if it is asked, and how to have a sense of, we can say, a sense of connectivity. Will this thinker connect with sociology optional? No, Sachin. No. Aristotle, Plato, and Socrates have nothing to do with sociology optional. All right. Aristotle versus Plato. Yes, it implies that how the idea of justice for Aristotle is different from that of Plato. That is what versus means. Not that they are fighting. It means how their ideas are distinct and different from each other. Distinct and different from each other. Is it clear, Labdi? What is the ma'am email ID? Tanu, my email ID is this, but if there are direct short questions, I'll respond to it. Okay. So this is there. Fine. So this is what we can, like, start off with. So the first question, remember, when we are talking about this given area, do you remember that I had discussed this question earlier? I did not give the answer. I said I'll take up the answer later. How to draw the structure, how to build the content. I said that we will be taking up little later. But when we are speaking of this given sub-segment associated with, like, we can consider what the question is all about and how we should approach it, please start reflecting upon it. Because Indian thinkers and philosophers, as I told you, that it is something, yeah, it is connected to PSIR, Prashant, but please understand, whether PSIR or philosophy, when we are speaking of this given sub-segment, one has to be very clear that it's not PSIR that you need to write, it's not philosophy that you have to write. You have to write what is correct, what is morally upright, how to arrive at what is the right thing to do, because it's not political science that we are studying here. That's why the wisdom of optional is not something which has to be brought over here. General studies, a general overview is what is needed. That's why I said in GS history, when you're reading Buddhism, Jainism, that is sufficient to get a brief understanding related to it. Okay, so please show the justice table, 5 to 6 seconds. I mean, will Kaushik, if I do that, you'll get the like annotated PPT. You'll get it. You'll have it with you. So you will have an access to this given subsegment that we are talking about. It's not that it's not coming to you. It will arrive like after the class. All right. So now, with respect to this, in PSIR, one study their political ideas. Yeah, that's what. That's like implicit at all times. When UK is converted from constitutional monarchy to full parliamentary democratic, then we might think of this reparation. It's like accepting one's intellectual and moral defeat. According to me, they will never ever do that. Anyway, I mean, till the time they are like shrewd and cunning about statesmanship, the moment any country which feels morally upright, grows morally, will be the one who will have the tendency to accept that yes, we went wrong. Otherwise, it is tough. Anyway, let us get to the questions which we were discussing. So these are the nature of questions that are asked, and we will be reflecting upon how to deal with them. So when we were talking about the life of great leaders, okay, that inspire us in many ways, this was the question. Remember, I said that this question was asked earlier, and which leader has a lasting impact on you, and in what way? Okay, so which leader? That's the question. What way? And mention one outstanding value that you have imbibed. Okay, and how it is important for you as a civil servant. So that was the question which all of you can see. Before I go ahead with the details of this given question, I had shared, if you remember, I said that this question was asked and one of the students ended up writing about Krishna, right? And when that answer was given associated with Krishna, I was like quite amazed, and that student also got amazing marks. I mean, like it was like 138 or so in ethics. It was good. Anyway, so here I'm giving you the example of Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam. So what should be the approach? First, mentally work on the approach, because you're a beginner student. Always try to make a list of points, and after making a list of points, then try to substantiate the answer accordingly. So here you can see, first it's written, describe which leader has a lasting impact on you and why. So who is the leader and why you are choosing that leader. Then discuss the outstanding value, because the question is one value. So the outstanding value of that leader that you have imbibed. And then how that value is important for civil services. So connect it with civil services and discuss its impact or relative importance from the perspective of civil services, right? Again, when we are talking about it, first starting with Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam and sharing this, that he is the first scientist, he is also the president, but at the same time, you are adding this, we can say, a statement which is like bringing more light to his personality. It is saying that, but he was so much more than the labels that can describe. So, what are the labels we were attaching? He was a scientist, he was a president, but when you are really adding a lot of weightage to a personality, you are saying that this person is more than the labels that can describe this person. So more than the labels that can describe means the way you are referring to the person. The person cannot be like explained or cannot be, we can say, consolidated on the basis of, we can say, the labels or the values you are associating with that individual, pertaining to what that individual like thinks or has a faith in, or we can consider the possibilities that the person has created for others, the larger society, to get inspired by. If you are unable to connect it or contain it in limited words, then you write such expression that he was so much more than the labels that can describe. Okay, anyway, so you are talking about how he inspired others to dream big. Okay, dream big, and he was letting through the example. And he not only limited his growth to individual growth, but he expanded it to country and world. So not just individual growth, along with individual growth, the growth of the country and growth of the world is something that he spoke of. On the basis of this principle or this idea, when you further move ahead, you can think of Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam, that how he is embracing unique traits and strength. He is also daring us to think differently, innovatively, and associated with experiment, right? So can we substantiate our answer with an anecdote? Until and unless, Devansh, it's not written illustrate with suitable examples, do not incorporate anecdote, otherwise it will eat up the core of your answer. Anecdotes can be incorporated if words like explain with suitable examples, illustrate with suitable examples, or illustrate the given statement. Example word is not given. Illustrate the given statement. Then also you can add example. Elucidate if the term is given, elucidate, then also you can give anecdotes, but not otherwise. These are the only three spaces where you can add anecdotes. How to make this answer via Bose or Rajendra Prasad? So you can see, you can just learn Vivek when we are talking about it. First, recall the person, briefly introduce who the person was, and then talk about the specific value that inspired you. Okay, so he reminded again and again us again not to be afraid of failures, of what people will think. Okay, because only when you are constantly trying, it is then that you are able to become fearless, you can become courageous, you can create a breakthrough. So he displayed the qualities of devotion, dedication, determination, right? And his vision helped India to develop as a stronger country, a progressive country. His leadership was spoken of across the world, right? He had a remarkable quality of leadership, and he had the tendency, I have used this term, that you should always lead from both the ends. When it is needed, lead from the front, and when it is needed, lead from the back. Remember this term I have always used. So when should a person lead from the front, and when should a person lead from the back? I had discussed this given segment to all of you. So a person should lead from the front when, suppose the leader is experiencing failure by the team. When you own up the failure of the team, it is then that you are leading from the front. And suppose the team has got a massive win, then you are leading from the back, because you are giving the credit to the team and you're standing at the back and applauding for them. So you're leading from the back. That's the virtuous quality which we can also see is there in majority of, we can say, the head scientists. We can see the head of ISRO, DRDO, we can see those. Dr. Kalam also possessed this quality when we speak of it. Leading from the front when the team is weak, and leading from the back when the team is strong. Yes, very true. That's what I imply to say. Okay, yes, more like MS Dhoni. Yes, it means that we have to read about all the important personalities. I mean, isn't that beautiful that they are going to empower you with the way you think and see the world? And rather than seeing garbage TikTok videos, or I would say videos associated with Instagram, won't it be like more empowering when you are getting to know these personalities and their core ideals, core insights? It will, because it is considered that the ideas you surround yourself with is constantly nurturing your personality. So the question is how we are surrounding ourselves, with what kind of ideas, thoughts and perspectives, right? So further over here, as we are talking about it, so we all can see that Dr. Kalam, he had a remarkable quality of leadership, and as a leader of the team, he used to be the first one to accept failures. Okay, and to give credit to his team. This is something. Now, most outstanding, so you've given a lot of, we can say, values. The value of, like, you have given that these are the qualities that he possesses, like not being afraid of failures. We can see that like having devotion, dedication, determination to work, having profound leadership, right? So here when we are further moving ahead, we can see that the most outstanding value of Dr. Kalam is associated with what kind of impact it is generating on our minds. So his unparalleled humility. And when I say unparalleled humility, it is coming from where? From deep sense of compassion. And that is something which you think is important for civil servants. So first you are, like any thinker you speak of, first you are giving an overview, like a basic, like achievement, one sentence or two sentences, then the set of values the person possesses, and then picking one of the values and then substantiating that value, how you have got inspired, and how you being inspired by that value helps you to become a better civil servant, right? So here we can see, so he wanted each and every Indian to realize their fullest potential, okay, to contribute to the well-being of the country. And he said, look at the sky, we are not alone. The whole universe is friendly to us and conspires only to give the best to those who dream and work. You can see that, right? So after this, you are going to connect how this component of humility and compassion is going to make you a great civil servant. So you start substantiating this humility. So humility, it is important because it makes you modest. When it keeps you modest, when you are not considering yourself larger than life, when you are not considering yourself that you are the person who is important. Generally bureaucracy suffers from this colonial legacy. I have shared this with all of you, that we are the important ones, or we are the ones who are running the show, the most important ones. So civil servants, they often display this ivory tower mentality, this sense of supremacy, this sense of individualism. So with humility, what will happen? With humility, you are open to seek inputs from others. You are open to, like, connect with others and get their insights, their pieces of wisdom while taking a decision. So you are taking all facts in consideration while making the decision. All sections of society and their best interest is taken in consideration. You can also see that you do not suffer from the ivory tower mentality, the supremacy, the individualism, okay, the disdain for public participation. You are open to incorporate the the possibility of consolidating the insights from others. Word limit of the answer? Well, Vivek, if I give you a cut, copy, paste exact word limit answer, do you think you'll be able to exactly get inspired and memorize every single word? So I have allowed the possibility of the answer to stretch up a little, so that you get inspired by the content easily, breezily. You understand the content thoroughly, and then you are able to make a gist out of it, because you can sense a lot of words and sentences can be eliminated. But you need a language for clarity and expression. That is the purpose why the word limit has been, like, I have tried to create ease in understanding rather than sticking to the word limit to begin with. All right, that's the reason. So he was only the president who has the courage to raise the voice against the government of the day. Yes, yes, yes. When anything went wrong, he used to send the bill back. And the government was really tired that how come we have got such a, like, vigilant president who's, like, all aware of his rights and he's exercising it to the fullest. So very upright man, I would say. So that's what. So with respect to this, when we are further substantiating it, the pocket veto man, yes, yes. I'm appreciating this fact that all of you are, at least aware of APJ Abdul Kalam sir, and you are aware that how the kind of difference is being created. Anyway, we all can further think of this given segment with respect to the possibility of, we can consider what kind of intervention is created by him. So we all can see that a great way of showing humility is accepting and admitting to past mistakes. So this is another benefit you get from humility. So you can see it is generating modesty. It is making you open to, like, seek inputs from others. You can see it is considering all facts. It is something which is saving you from these vices. So saving from vices, and when I say saving from vices, okay, this is another segment. It is making you capable to accept past mistakes, okay, and that is something which is making you capable to learn from your mistakes, execute upon the possibility of bringing change. Okay, so it makes you acceptable. You are like a believable normal human being who's ready to accept mistakes and work upon it accordingly. So each civil servant has to place the people at the center. It is the people who should be at the center rather than the civil servant. That is something which makes you responsive, respectful to their wishes, accountable towards the people, and selflessness that can be exercised. Okay, and by this you can see inclusiveness in the decision is there, humbleness in the behavior is there, and this humbleness will create compassion. This is something which will connect you to the larger concerns of the people in totality when we are speaking of this given dimension. Yes, yes. He was the best ever teacher who always interacted with the younger generation to build the nation. I mean, if you read his speeches, if you read his books, simple, very simple language, but very inspiring. His quotations are also a little stretched up whenever I quote him in essay classes, but little stretched up, but very, in, like, I would say, wisdom oriented, thought provoking, rich quotations when we speak of it, right? Okay, you're reading Wings of Fire. Amazing, Anjali. So that's what I mean, like your generation should be, I believe that, like your generation should be exposed to good quality reading. That is how we become better version of ourselves. At your age, when there was like this was an advantage that there was not so much of exposure to technology. I was in the habit of so much of voracious reading. I remember in the summer break I used to issue books from the library, and even if friends had some good books, carry it for my summer break. That used to be Delhi University summer break, used to be 2.5 months, and I used to finish a list of books that I had in my mind. And you'll be surprised to know that I used to read like lying, sitting, walking, talking, like whatever. So I used to read very comfortably 10 to 12 hours. Okay, because other than exercising and eating there was no work. So just like doing some cycling or going for morning evening walk with my parents, and other than that, or playing with few of my cousins. How long will you play? So it was like almost like 10 hours minimum of reading. Someday if some relative or friend has come, then 8 hours, but on an average that was the standard protocol that we like followed. And that is how like a list of books, a world of literature got exposed. um, Still I have the regret I've not read enough. Even presently in my book, in my like home, if you come, like little more than half books are the books that I have purchased, that I will read it, but I have yet not completed it. And there is a sense of, I would say, mm, I won't say guilt, because guilt is too strong, but there is a sense of responsibility that I have to complete that. Okay, so that is something which all of you should always try to get inspired to read good books, good pieces of literature, like great personalities, because they will be your real friends, and they will be the ones who will be inspiring you to become a better version of yourself. So because people around you, like for example, if you are seeking advice from friends, they will give as per their mental intellect, no, as per their level of maturity. But when you are, for example, when you are reading these thinkers, these chapters, you're like, wow, this is also a way to think. This is also, we can, like, perceive the reality. This is also an alternate truth to existence. Okay, so you must be feeling that given possibility right now. Imagine making them your intellectual friends, your virtual friends. As virtual friends, how much impact they can create in your personality. Think about it. That's why read good books. That's why it is considered books are the best friends of an individual. Yes, even good movie, watching a good movie or good TV series can also be inspiring, which can give you right set of examples, right set of thought process, even right set of values, virtuous values, how you can cope up with challenges of life, cope up with, like, the inspirations associated with, like how to live a better life. So that's what you can reflect upon. So yes, he was a down to earth person with professional intelligence, beyond doubt. So I'm so happy to see so many of you are reading so many books. Someone is reading Dale Carnegie, someone is reading Mahatma Gandhi, someone is reading APJ Abdul Kalam. Amazing, amazing. I really appreciate that. One of my seniors, he's a bureaucrat though. So he is again a very voracious reader. So, sir, he said this thing that, Shweta, when I am under the pressure that I won't be able to complete 100 books in a year, that's what his target is. Okay, 100 books in a year. So what he does is, because of work pressure and stuff, so he goes for morning walk and evening walk, 1 hour each. So it's like I put on the audiobook, and like in the officers colony, the officers park that he has, it's like I keep taking rounds for 1 hour. I set the alarm because other things are also there. And for that 1 hour, when I am listening to that audiobook, I just put the audiobook and I keep an complete intent focus related to what ideas are discussed and what possibilities are there. Like, that's amazing, sir. Like, I have done audiobooks, only during COVID, when I was dusting my bookshelves and listening to audiobooks, so that while dusting, the dusting doesn't become tedious, or arranging my, like, this like I would say the cloth rack doesn't become tedious. So everything is arranged, and at the same time my mind is not distracted only with the work that I'm doing. There is some qualitative input that is going on inside my mind. So autobiography of like B.R. Ambedkar, but it was written way, way back, even before independence, like 1930s or so. Similarly, the autobiography of a yogi, all these books I had gone through audiobooks. Audiobooks are also amazing, but I'm a bit traditional person. I love to read books on paper, see the words, underline the keywords, underline the expression. That's my way of dealing with books. To each his own. But it's just that be surrounded by amazing pieces of ideas and perspectives. They will keep nurturing you and help you even in this, like, in building the content associated with ethics. Unique examples, unique, like we can say, quotations, perspectives, comparative analogy, you will be loaded with it. Just celebrate learning. This is what ethics encourages you to. And learning not bookish or academic knowledge, knowledge which makes you a better person, knowledge which makes you more humane in nature. That's what you could see was asked related to APJ Abdul Kalam sir, that which value is inspiring you the most and how is that value essential for civil services, right? Okay, reflect upon this now. So, falsehood takes place of truth when it results in unblemished common good. Quite tricky, this quotation. We will decode it bit by bit. See, one of the methods of decoding the quotations, whenever you are getting like challenged by the quotation, okay, one of the methods which I can inspire you is repeat it multiple times. This applies also for ethics classes, sorry, essay classes. When in essay also, when there are tedious quotations, this is what I encourage, because when you repeat a word on a loop, you start understanding the spirit of the word, you start entering into the core of the word. So suppose if we get this specific sentence, which is, what is tedious? Tedious, Rathod. That's what it means. Tedious. Tedious. Tedious means when something is requiring extra effort, more hard work. That is tedious. All right. So now, when we are speaking of it, no, tedious may not always be boring, but it will tax your energy, extra energy. Okay, now, so when we are speaking of this given subsegment related to falsehood takes the place of truth, means truth gets replaced. That's what it implies. So falsehood takes the place of truth. Truth gets replaced when what happens? It results in unblemished common good. Okay. So when, like, what does this imply? When it results in unblemished common good. What is blemishes? When you get rashes, you get hurt. Unblemished, not hurt. Something which is untouched, something which is pure, common good. So when you are exercising falsehood, when you are exercising a lie, and from that lie you are aspiring for common good, then it is no more a lie, it becomes a truth. That's what it implies. I repeat once again, pay attention to it. Okay. So suppose when you are speaking a lie, and the intention behind speaking the lie is common good, the larger common good, so that the people don't get hurt. The people's sentiment, their existence, their survival doesn't get hurt. So that falsehood, when with this intention it is exercised, that the larger common good is preserved, people's rights are preserved, then in that situation, we all can see that the falsehood is replacing the truth. Means the lie takes the position, okay, takes the gravitas of truth. It takes the, we can say, the importance, it takes the position of truth. That's what was written in Tirukural. Tirukural, as all of you know, is written by Thiruvalluvar, one of the noted, we can say, poets and thinkers from Tamil Nadu. So you can first and foremost, you can take, this is the layman quote. Okay. So layman quote, is it really the layman quote? Acha, this quotation that you gave, Labdi. All right, all right. So, okay, all right. So with respect to this, lie replaces truth when it becomes common sense. No, not really. It is not saying lie replaces truth when it becomes common sense. No, that will be an incorrect interpretation. This is not something which, the quotation is saying. It is saying lie replaces truth when lie is looking into the larger concern of common good. When it is like preserving the interest of the larger masses. Yes, in simple language, as Vijeta is putting it, that किसी की भलाई के लिए बोला गया झूठ झूठ नहीं रहता है. तो यहाँ किसी की भलाई नहीं है, यहाँ समाज, ठीक है, वस्तुनिष्ठता की बात है. सो समाज की भलाई में, ठीक है, संसार की भलाई में ही असल भलाई है, तो वही झूठ जो है वो झूठ नहीं रह जाता, सच बन जाता है. दैट्स व्हाट इट implies. Okay, when we are speaking of it, falsehood is something which becomes the, so I hope Vijeta you are understanding that, because you asked in Hindi, so I responded in Hindi. All right, so and same is with XY, as you are responding in Hindi, or Payal, you are also responding in Hindi. So I hope all those students who suddenly wrote in Hindi, all of you are able to understand what I spoke of it. So when we are speaking of the given possibility of common good for the larger like goodness of the masses, in that condition we also need to reflect upon the possibility of, we can say, how is it going to benefit, how is it going to nurture the tendencies associated with what the, like we can say, the aspirations are associated with what we need to achieve anyway. And that is something which we can connect with the ideals of truth, the ideals of social goodness anyway. So here you can see I've created this content. So Tirukural is a classical Tamil text which is dealing with everyday virtues. So first you are talking about purpose of this book. So everyday virtues of an individual. Okay, so what is the book? So here is a basic intro related to the book, and its content. Then you can see this couplet, it implies that lie could be classed with truth, means lie equals to it can become truth when it is if it is blessed. There is a condition, if it is blessed, if it blesses someone with good, means if there is goodness lying in lie, then in that condition the lie can be classified, or it can be put together with the domain of truth. So falsehood has the nature of truth. It's not that just by speaking lie everything is negated to a sin or everything becomes wrong. No, this is the level, the depth with which you need to think, that just by speaking a lie, it's not that you are committing a crime or you are doing something wrong. Despite speaking a lie, there is a possibility that you may get associated with, you may get like your concepts related to the component of like what ought to be practiced at all times. So falsehood has the nature of truth when, if is again the condition, if it confers a benefit that is free from fault, means there should be no kind of implicit negativity, implicit sin, implicit harm for anyone. If it is free from any fault, then the lie is not a lie, it is in the category of truth. That's what. In other words, falsehood, such as a lie, has same respect as truth if it has benign goals resulting from unblemished common good. Benign goals, like the larger ideals, which is not affected by any kind of, we can say, malicious intent, it is then that it establishes itself as a common good. So in the present context, when we are discussing about this given sub-segment, we can see it could mean that some actions may appear bad. Some actions may seem to be bad, manifestly, but they could be latently good, means like suppose there, when I was a kid, I remember my grandmother when she was alive, so she used to make us drink a specific drink which was an ayurvedic herbal thing. It was a root of some plant which used to taste like so horrible, it was so, I would say, bitter. So it was like called chirayata. So she used to boil that root of chirayata, and the liquid, the water used to turn like a maroonish, murky maroonish kind of color. It used to cool off and everyone was supposed to drink it. Okay, so when, like yes, the kadwa chirayata, so as few of you can connect with it. So when, like that was to be drunk, so we hated it, like what is she giving? And then she used to provide a little, like laddu which she used to prepare, that after having this I'll give you the laddu. So because of like the desire to have the laddu, we used to like stop our breath so that we don't taste the drink. We used to just gulp it down and and then have some water, and after that just have that laddu and feel happy that finally we could have the laddu. So little bites of the laddu, and we used to be like very happy, me, my cousin. So that was an interesting aspect of childhood that can be connected to this. So there can be some actions which may appear to be bad. Like from outwardly possibility, there are situations when a mother is disciplining a child. Okay, when anyone in authority is for the purpose of bringing rectification, the person is indulging in any coercive behavior or a lie or any such possibility. Okay, but in the latent aspect, in the hidden aspect, in the, like, connected aspect, it holds some kind of benefit, some kind of benefit for the larger public, like the Chiraita held benefit for my system, for cleansing it, purifying my blood, and also keeping me free from any infection, cold, cough, etc. during winters. So in the similar manner, if someone is speaking a lie but with a latent intention of common good, the larger good of the public, then it is not something which is harmful, then it is not something which is damaging. All right, I hope all of you can connect with this, right? So it could be analyzed in the light of the heroes in films on everyday life, like breaking some or the other rule. So we can see sometimes people break rules, right, to get the things rightly done for some social good. So such a falsehood or illegality, it is sometimes forgiven, right? Forgiven by the people also, the audience who are watching it, because it is ultimately leading to the common good, flawless common good, right? It is going to help, like let us say, like more like you can connect it with, remember this person like Robin Hood. So Robin Hood kind of a tendency is what this statement is giving, right? So if someone is doing something illegal, but to help the exploited laborers who are tied by a zamindar, okay, or a money lender, then such an action, despite seeming to be illegal in the initial go, it is not wrong per se, because it is going to help the people. Okay, so a free from fault or free from blemish action, okay, gives even a falsehood nature of truth, because the falsehood becomes like attains the nature of truth, because it is actually a result in blessings. It is the overriding goal, okay, and that is associated with the common good when we speak of it. Yes, very good, very good. I appreciate, Nirmala, you are able to connect it with the previous examples I have given you, that when something is illegal but ethical, that is Gandhi breaking the salt law. Okay, so that is something which you can connect. Very good, very good. So I appreciate, like, all those who are able to connect with such examples. Legal amendments are brought. Aditya, Article 370 is a legal amendment. All right. So you have to think about actions which are considered to be illegal, but they are ethical. Those kind of possibilities are supposed to be brought. I appreciate, Nirmala, that your sense of clarity of ethics is getting established so very much that you can borrow examples from other chapters and bring it when and where it is needed to be discussed. I appreciate that. Okay. Can we link to Bhagat Singh? Yes, yes, yes. You can connect it with Bhagat Singh and Udham Singh, Sardar Udham Singh as well, Sudipto, when we are talking about that. That what they did was not something legal or something correct. But if it is for the larger public good, then it gets justified. Okay. So I believe all of you are now connecting. Yes, yes, India hid the fact that it is going to conduct nuclear test from US and other countries. So hiding that fact is for the larger good, the common good, so that falsehood is taking the place of truth. I truly appreciate from the bottom of my heart all these examples all of you are coming up with, whereby like lie is maintained, but it is attaining the pedestal of truth because common good is involved. All those examples which you are taking up. SME, please help me with few other queries as I move ahead. Okay. Again, another question which all of you can see given over here. Why do you think secularism is a value considered as ethical? And then Nehru's view on secularism. Okay, so I have broken this question into certain subparts. First, explaining what is secularism and how it is a part of Indian constitution and democracy. It is a part of Indian conscience. Again, how secularism is an ethical value. Now, mind it, this is a very different notes. It is not Indian society, secularism and communalism. This is not polity, secularism and constitution, preamble. No, this is secularism as an ethical value. This kind of answer you can find only in paper 3. So certain terminologies will be same, like term related to equality, intra-religious and inter-religious domination is opposed. These are something common possibilities, but the concern and engagement will be more ethical in nature. So you will be like discussing about this equal respect to all religion, peaceful coexistence, brotherhood, harmony. You'll also talk about high level of conscience and connect it with Mahatma Gandhi's belief that religion is a personal affair and it should not be a basis of like exercising discrimination in any form. So you discuss two parts. First, like the background of secularism. Okay, so this is secularism with respect to its background. You could have connected with Sarva Dharma Sambhava, uh, like when we are talking about it from ancient Indian tradition, and how secularism is a part of our inner conscience, it is a part of our wisdom. So secularism, you can give its background. After that, you're talking about secularism as an ethical value. And after ethical value, then you are just giving a brief dimension of the present condition. Okay. So what is the present reality related to secularism? This is the first part of the answer. Second part of the answer is asking about Nehru when we are discussing about him. So you can see Nehru's view on secularism. So what does he believe? So he is talking about complete separation of religion and state. When he is talking about equal protection to all religion, state not having any religion of its own, okay, or favoring one religion over the other, okay. And again we can see that it is like not state can interfere with the matters of religion if it is associated with bringing social reform. For example, we can see caste discrimination, dowry, sati, triple talaq, all of it can be like incorporated over here. So to bring legal rights, to bring social reform, secularism can allow intervention with the cultural practices, religious practices of a specific religious community. Then further, Nehru believed that secularism is a complete opposite of communalism of all kinds of communalism, because communalism is a threat to national unity. And for him, secularism is not just a principle, plus along with a principle, it is the only guarantee for unity and integrity of India. If we are not exercising secularism, we will not survive as a nation state in totality. We will succumb, we will crumble to exist as an independent country. Okay, so Nehruvian idea you are substantiating in the answer, and that is how you end up writing it. Then finally, I have given you one more segment pertaining to differentiate between nationalism and pluralism. I had discussed this, remember, few days back. Someone of you had asked, and I said, why don't you search difference between patriotism and nationalism? And in nationalism, why don't you read the essay of Tagore? So this, if asked as question, discuss Tagore's criticism of nationalism and its relevance today. So difference between nationalism and pluralism. Pluralism is diversity, and nationalism, if we are talking about narrow nationalism. So narrow nationalism is like Hindu nationalism, Islamic nationalism, Sikh nationalism, and that can pose a threat to national integrity, national unity. Because the moment you say Hindu nationalism or Islamic nationalism or Sikh nationalism, you'll either remove other people from the country, or if you'll keep them as second grade subordinate citizens. Either way, it will threaten unity, equality, harmony, brotherhood in a country. So you will be reading this. Okay, read this as a homework. Okay, and like be prepared with this. Just read it. It's like one go information. And if you get stuck, I'm definitely there to support you. So Rabindranath Tagore's critique of nationalism, what he had criticized, and how it is relevant even today. So you can reflect upon this. Okay, and it is something very simple. What I explained you in a brief segment, elaboration of it is given. So you'll read it and you'll be like, oh yes, I understand. Patriotism is something which we can like always endorse, because patriotism is unconditional love for one's country, where you are ready to sacrifice your personal well-being for the greatness of the country. So patriotism is good and essential. In services, you need patriotism. Whether you're a police officer, army officer, civil servant, you're a teacher, you're a lawyer, you're a doctor, patriotism is something which is essential. But nationalism, where you are defining the idea of nation as per your community, your people, your identity. This will encourage identity politics, and this can lead to divisive politics or division of the country per se. All right, so you can go through all these ideas, okay, and then we can reflect upon the given dimension. I have also given Mahatma Gandhi's quotation and explained that those who say religion has nothing to do with politics do not know what religion is. Okay, so this is a very interesting quotation. You can reflect upon this. So Tagore's answer and Gandhiji's answer, you can read, you can substantiate, you can understand the approach, and after understanding the approach, you can further elaborate. All right, so this is it for today. I'll be wrapping it up because again, like tomorrow morning I have to come, so I'll have to take a break, and we'll continue with this discussion tomorrow. So Western philosophers and thinkers, ancient we have completed. We'll be heading to medieval and modern tomorrow. All right, please start seeing the bullet notes which has been provided in ethics notes, and just go through it. That will also fix your basics. All right, so this is it for today. Thank you.